Chapter 57, in which balls are Yuled. Chapter text: the way the tables were done at the ball were interesting, smaller ones with menus. You read what you wanted from the menu, and the house elves would magic it up. Harry wondered if it was a lot of work, and how they had planned ahead for it. The topic of interest after their moment of silence constantly ping-ponged between the Weasley quintuplet and Hermione dating Crumb. Ron was indignant about the latter, to the point that Emily finally asked him, "Are you upset that you didn't ask first?" It was a question Harry had been debating on asking, and the way it had Ron so gobsmacked made Harry glad he wasn't the one who asked. If it were Harry, Ron would have been tempted to double down and argue the point, but since it was a younger girl who they didn't know, the question stung a bit more and he had to actually address it. "I don't know," Ron admitted finally. "I'm certainly peeved about it." But even if I had asked her, how did he ask her? She must have asked him, because there is no way he interrupted one of her study sessions and came out of it in one piece. "I mean, Madame Pomfrey can fix just about anything. We don't know that he didn't need patching up," Harry pointed out. "Besides, there's no point in getting worked up about it. He walks like a duck. But he plays really well. He also spends the majority of time on land. The duck thing outweighs the Quidditch thing." "Is this what dating's going to be like?" Laura asked. "Because I was looking forward to it, but now I'm not so sure." "Boy, I hope not," Harry told her honestly. After dinner, food was relegated to buffet tables along the walls, and all the chairs and tables were swept back near them. A band Ron identified as the Weird Sisters got up on stage and struck up a tune, and Harry was once again immensely relieved that he had gotten out of being the fourth champion. Did not envy anyone who had to get up in front of the whole school and dance. Yes, they joined in after the first dance, but he was reasonably sure he didn't have the whole school's undivided attention. "Hey, Harry," Fred called, dancing by with Angelina. "Doing all right?" "Yeah," Harry called back. "Good to see you all in one place." "Well, we couldn't miss this, now could we?" Harry agreed that this was a point, and after a couple of dances he and Laura sat back down. "So this is nice," Laura said. "I've been writing back to Mum and Dad about the whole thing. I don't think they believe half of it." "I mean, from a regular standpoint, all of it is pretty fantastic," Harry agreed. "We went to the Quidditch World Cup final earlier this year, and the tents we used looked like tents on the outside, but were big as houses on the inside." "Really? Do they put themselves up?" "I'm pretty sure some do. I was thinking about looking for one next time I'm at Diagon Alley." By the time Ron and Emily came back, Harry and Laura had gotten onto the topic of wizard means of travel and the pros and cons of each. Harry really only had something nice to say about broomsticks, magic cars, and the Hogwarts Express. "Okay," Ron said when they sat down. "I'm reasonably sure Percy is Donald and Bill is Fred." "Fred isn't Fred?" Harry asked, baffled. "No, too obvious," Ron said, shaking his head. "How do they do that?" Emily asked. "Have one person be a different one?" "We are reasonably sure it's Polyjuice Potion," which necessitated Harry and Ron explaining Polyjuice as best they could without implicating themselves in their second-year activities, by which time Hermione came over and sat down. "You boys having fun?" she asked, grinning. "You," Ron said, pointing at her. "I have a bone to pick with you." "I wasn't going to tell you ahead of everyone else. There was too much of a chance of it getting out," Hermione said. "We want to know who asked who," Harry said, heading Ron off before he could say something stupid. "Crumb asked me in the library. Turns out he kept skulking around in there because he was working up the nerve to ask me out." Harry noted how giddy Hermione was about it all, stomped on Ron's foot under the table, and gave him a pointed look. Ron grimaced, apparently took a lot of effort to swallow everything down, did apparently have one question. "But Crumb, of all people," Ron demanded. "That reminds me," Hermione said, fishing in her purse before handing Ron a slip of parchment. "I told him I'd go to the ball with him if he'd do an autograph for you." Ron took the slip and considered it for a long moment before putting it in an inside pocket. "This is acceptable." Meantime, in the rafters above the Great Hall, the secret order of familiars were having their own Yule Ball. Snips had followed Mauve through a hole in the wall and up to the rafters, had to take several long beats to process all the familiars entertaining themselves, mostly cats and owls, although he did spot more than a few non-standard familiars here and there, and Buckbeak in a cozy alcove. He wondered if house elves had magicked that up or if Hogwarts itself had done it, which, to be fair, was equally likely. There were also a lot of house elves up here, some puttering around and serving the familiars, but most of them cutting loose like the rest of them, although one was questionable. "What are you doing here?" Snips asked Creature. Creature was given the day off to do as he pleases, Creature told him. This pleases Creature. That checks out, Marv agreed. Gotta go. I see Trevor, and we had plans for some dancing. Snips tried very hard to avoid rolling his eyes, reminded himself that most everyone here had come to have a good time, and being a stick in the mud was the opposite of that. "May Creature serve you anything?" Creature asked him. "Does that please you?" Snips asked him, when he nodded. "Peace soup." Creature looked at another house elf that had been loitering near what looked like a miniature version of the buffet tables beneath them. The second elf nodded, tugged on a string that had a horn attached to it. "Peace soup." A few moments later, Creature was handing Snips a thimble of pea soup, complete with a pea in it. "Thank you," Snips said, adding a bit of extra oomph to the give me strength part of his moment of silence. Walked over to the edge of the beam to look down and monitor the dance, sipping at his soup as he did so. Thus far, Harry seemed to be staying out of trouble, which was an absolute rarity on any given day, and the fact that he was surrounded by people they knew did nothing to dissuade him from the belief that something would happen before it was all over with. Looked up at some sniffling. "What are you crying over?" Snips demanded of Creature, who had joined him on the beam and was currently dabbing at his eyes with a hanky. "It's just moments like this make the job all worthwhile," Creature sobbed, blowing his nose. Snips grimaced, resisted rolling his eyes, decided to focus on fishing his pea out of the thimble to eat it as Creature wound down. "Want to dance?" Creature asked him. Snips chewed on his pea, debating, drained his thimble before setting it aside. "All right." They did a few more dances, Harry drifting back to the snack table as Ron and Crumb agreed to swap partners, Ron dancing with Hermione and Emily looking dazzled at getting to dance with Crumb. "Well?" Harry asked Sirius, who was sampling the punch. "Not yet," Sirius reported. "I'm getting disappointed here. What quality of shenaniganizing teens are we raising?" "I mean, there are a lot of first and second years," Harry pointed out. "Ah, that could be it. We're going to have to switch to stealing nips under the table." Harry negotiated a couple of nip-free cups of punch before heading back to their table. "Cheers," he said, handing Laura hers. "I don't recognize that guy by the punch," Laura said after thanking him. "Is he one of the other professors?" "Ah, no, that's Sirius. He's my godfather." Took a moment to try and picture Sirius in a teaching position, resolved to spring that on him when he had one of the Creevy brothers handy with a camera. "Did you see the garden out front?" Laura nodded. "It looked like there's other people out there. I think we can walk around in it. We should check it out." Laura agreed, and after ducking by Remus to let him know, "Do not tell Sirius. He'll try to give you advice, and it's all bad," Remus told him. They headed out the front doors. "Ooh," Laura noised, as dazzled as Harry was by the snow and the fairy lights over the decorations. "I love magic," Harry said, grinning. "So it doesn't all get old after a while?" Laura asked him as they followed the path through the hedges. "It hasn't for me yet," Harry told her. "I hope it doesn't, not this way," he said, steering her away from where he spotted Fleur and her date in the bushes. "So that's not any different," Laura observed. Come again. I do watch TV." "Ah," Harry said. "I just really don't want to get hexed." Laura agreed that was fair, the two of them continuing on until they stumbled across Hagrid and Madame Olympe. "You know what? I'd rather take the hexing," Harry decided after about 5 seconds. Laura tugged on his sleeve. "You're taking care of magical creatures. What kind of bug is okay with cold weather?" "Do what?" She pointed at a beetle crawling along the back of one of the stone reindeer. "That bug should be under the leaves somewhere weathering out winter, not out here crawling. It's not that warm in this maze." "Weird," Harry said, tugging his wand out. He had learned enough to know that he didn't want to just grab a strange bug. It flew off before he could do anything. Debate briefly on using a Keo on it, decided against. His luck, it'd sting him right as he caught it. "How dare you!" Harry and Laura both jumped at that, looked over at where Madame Olympe was hollering at Hagrid, watched blankly as she stomped off. "What was that about?" Laura asked him. "I don't know, but I don't think it's any of our business," Harry said, tugging her away. "Let's go back in." They found Ron and Emily inspecting the snack bar, went over, Harry debating on whether he should tell Ron what just happened or wait until later, decided on the latter by the time they reached them. "Anything good?" The little sandwiches, Emily told him. Okay, so near as I can figure, Bill is Fred, George is Edmund, Percy is Donald, Charlie is George, and Fred is Hubert, Ron told him. Actually, Fergus is Hubert and Fred is Fergus, George said as he passed behind them. Ah, a complication I hadn't anticipated. How does anyone keep anyone straight around here? Emily asked, looking concerned. Mostly we look at tie colors. So really, the Yule Ball has been pretty taxing as far as identifying people, Harry said. True, Ron said, pondering this, looked over as two more people came up. Although some are easier to identify than others. Malfoy, Harry said, nodding. Hubert, Malfoy said, returning the nod. I what? At this point I'm assuming that no one is who they're supposed to be tonight, Malfoy said. So we don't know who this is and likely never will, Ron said, indicating Malfoy's date. Hi, I'm pretty sure I was Ron Weasley last I checked. How recently was this? Malfoy's date asked. Well, I checked before I came down, but that's been a couple hours ago, Ron admitted. This is Emily Dale. I'm reasonably sure she's still Emily Dale. She's a first year, Malfoy said. We've been discussing care of magical creatures and hippogriff care. I was always fond of griffins growing up, but hippogriffs sound awesome, Emily said. Ah, Ron said knowingly. Yes, Draco has been telling me what it's like being a hippogriff owner. He's very lucky he has the space. Mum and I live in a townhouse, so even if I learned the disillusionment charm, we wouldn't have the space. Harry and pretty much everyone else who recognized the wording immediately shot a look at Malfoy. This was Malfoy, purveyor of pureblood superiority. Did he seriously go to the Yule Ball with a muggle-born? So you put get a house in the country on your to-do list, Malfoy said. Depending on what you're good at, I'm sure I can give you some connections. Blaise Zabini faked a heart attack right as Harry pointed at Malfoy and announced him to be an imposter, Ron going down as well. Your friends are weird, Emily said. They are, Malfoy agreed. They don't appreciate hippogriffs like some people. Also, I'm reasonably sure griffins exist, Harry told her. Really? She asked, brightening. Well, Cerberus and Pegasi and Sphinx and mermaids and giant talking snakes do. The last one doesn't count, Blaise said. They only talk to you. They're very discerning. But now this bears asking the question of if griffins and hippogriffs get along, Emily said. The four of them got ready to answer, paused, looked at each other. You think anyone would notice if I Akio ed my copy of Fantastic Beasts? Malfoy asked. I'll get my copy of the Monster Book of Monsters, Harry said. Which then necessitated explaining that, yes, he had named his copy, and resulted in Emily Dale stating that she was taking care of magical creatures come third year. Chapter 58, in which libel is printed. Chapter text: The ball ended around midnight, making Harry wonder if anything had turned into a pumpkin and he just hadn't noticed. Everyone staggered to their respective dorms, and Harry and Ron escorted Laura and Emily to their dorms before following the others up to Dumbledore's office. I am pretty sure I saw Professor Flitwick crowd-surfing, Harry said on the way up. I am too, Remus said. And since when did you play bass? He asked Sirius. Since never, Sirius told him. Apparently after a certain point no one cares. Considering Sirius and the Weird Sisters had somehow turned one misheard line from Santana's Black Magic Woman into a screaming rave, Harry was inclined to agree with that assessment. Harry and Ron slept well into Boxing Day, only finally coming downstairs when the smells of coffee and food tempted them out of bed. Morning, Ron yawned as he collapsed at the table. It is still morning, right? Harry asked. Barely, Sirius said. So apparently the night life isn't for you boys. I mean, we did try it. Ah, glad to see you two up and about, Percy said chippily as he passed. Happy Boxing Day, so long as we don't have to box, Ron decided. What is this holiday anyway? Harry asked. Boxing Day was for the servants to take off and spend with their families, Hermione said rather pointedly. They weren't supposed to be working that day. Ah, Sirius said, looked at Creature. Which bears asking the question of what you're doing. Creature is spending his time off as he pleases, Creature told him, topping off his coffee mug. Well, there you go, Ta, Sirius said, raising his mug in salute before sipping at it. Although I think we need to get you a hobby, mate, a real one, not ironing socks. Ironing socks is calming, Creature insisted. Also, I am reasonably sure that undergarments don't need ironing. Creature needs something for when the socks run out, Creature said. Which is fair, but leaves me wondering how you got everything so crisp. creature is allowed some secrets. The start of the semester brought an announcement from Dumbledore at the new term's feast, a scavenger hunt. Seeing as how we have these long stretches between tasks and 2 schools' worth of guests to entertain, we have decided to include a small game for the rest of the students, he declared before waving his wand at his podium. Revelio. Several students oohed appreciatively at a golden scroll revealed by that action. We have hidden such scrolls all over the school, preferably at places of interest, Dumbledore said. They will have interesting tidbits about what they are floating in front of. For example, this one describes the head table. Each one is worth a point. The student with the highest score will win a special prize. Although, of course, you all are special, and knowledge is often reward enough. It didn't stop Revelio from being the most uttered word for the rest of the semester, with Flitwick's office hours frequently flooded by students who either hadn't learned the spell yet or needed a refresher. Harry, Ron, and Hermione, of course, were happy to participate in such a non-lethal activity, with Hermione especially taking pleasure in picking apart how the scrolls worked, since one would reveal itself to each student saying it, but wouldn't do so if the student tried again. The start of the new semester also came with an unpleasant surprise. Hagrid was not teaching care of magical creatures. He didn't get sacked, did he? Harry asked worriedly. Don't you read the papers, Potter? Malfoy demanded. Mostly I use them to line bird cages, Harry shot back. Why? What happened? Malfoy looked like he was debating, finally grumbled, pulled a paper out from under his robe, and shoved it at Harry without looking at him. Page 3. Harry flipped to the page, Ron reading over his shoulder. Both of them swore vehemently enough that the girls looked over from the unicorn they were petting, and the substitute teacher, Professor Grubberplank, knocked 10 points off of Gryffindor for language. Who's Skeeter? Harry groused, looking at the byline. This is all rubbish. Hagrid doesn't talk like that. Being half-giant makes sense, though, Ron said. I can understand why he doesn't let that get around. Is that a bad thing? Harry asked Ron. Let's just say Muggle perceptions of giants as big, dangerous, and people-eating was come by honestly. You know who employed some during the whole thing he did, Ron said, gesturing vaguely. The Muggles had to be told it was natural disasters that did it, which, while true, they figured was big storms. Dad told me about some of the cleanup. Some houses were flipped clean upside down if they weren't totally destroyed. But Hagrid isn't like that, Harry pointed out. Where does this Skeeter woman get off slandering him like this? Libel, Blaise corrected when Harry and Ron looked at him. Slander is spoken. In print it's libel. Either way, this is the sort of thing Muggles sue papers over, Harry said, ringing the paper. They do what? Neville asked. Which required explaining Muggle law as best Harry and the other half-bloods and Muggle-borns could. By the time class was over, everyone had decided that lawyers were most likely all vampires, and Harry really hated that he couldn't refute that belief. What he could do was constantly try to contact Hagrid, whether by knocking on his door or sending him an owl, talking his friends into sending owls too, both to Hagrid and to the Daily Prophet. The latter letters were him arguing that Hagrid was none of the things Rita Skeeter had said, putting his name as Vernon Dudley, to avoid them making a mountain out of the boy who lived writing in. The Quibbler ran a series of articles on giants and half-giant stigma. Harry had mild concerns that they were counting Roald Dahl's BFG as a credible source, since he was pretty sure wizards knew about fiction. But it all came to a head when he ran into Rita Skeeter on a trip to Hogsmeade and had to be asked to leave the 3 broomsticks for causing a scene. And I know it's you, he had spat at her, because those quills don't write junk like that. That incident had Hermione marching them back to Hagrid's hut and banging on the door with the threat to blast it down. Malfoy coming round from the Hippogriff pen to ask what was going on and backing up when he saw the state Hermione was in. That had been entertaining enough, but having Dumbledore open the door on Hermione instead of Hagrid took the cake there. The good news, though, Hagrid was back teaching next care of magical creatures. The bad news, smear pieces on Harry and Hermione. About getting a wizarding lawyer, Harry said, scowling at the paper. Best bet is probably Slytherin table, Ron told him, discovering that the second task not only took place in the Black Lake, but involved mermaids prompted a bustling side business for Fred, George, Edmund, Donald, Hubert, and Fergus, doing what they had threatened since second year, selling access to the Slytherin common room. Harry and Ron had finally had enough of the rumors and nipped down there one afternoon after class, Ross letting them in to show that, yes, the Weasley quintuplets plus Fergus had set up several bleachers in front of the windows and were now busy puzzling out how to get proper images in the lake since visuals didn't go very far. I mean, it's better than what we've got with the official setup, Fred pointed out. Oh yes, all that shows is the surface of the lake, George agreed. Perhaps Fred and George will give us some insight from when they come back from scoping the lake, Fergus said, looked up at them. We can't be letting Gryffindors into the Slytherin common room unattended, after all. Of course. Harry and Ron had to exchange glances at that, looked at Fergus. Ah, we're in Gryffindor, Harry felt compelled to point out. You don't even count, Ross pointed out. The hat wanted to put you in Slytherin, remember? Plus you're a Parseltongue, so you're like an honorary Slytherin or a Slytherin by proxy. Plus Hufflepuffs are in a neutral relation with Slytherin, Fred added. So that just leaves Eichel Ronnikins lacking a justification for being here, George added. I'm Harry's wingman, Ron said. We decided that before the Yule Ball. Fair enough. Fergus said, eyeing the windows thoughtfully. Wait a moment, what if we enchanted a window so it linked up with a mirror? So whatever shows in the mirror shows up in the window, George said. Brilliant, why didn't I think of that? Yes, Donald, why didn't you think of that? Details, George said, waving that off. Although it then bears asking who we get the mirrors on, the champions obviously. Pity you ducked out, Harry, Fred said. In response, Harry pointed at the windows. They want the champions to go in the Black Lake in February. I am not sorry I dipped out. Fair enough. What works with the mermaids for a bribe? Everyone exchanged glances, shrugged. Dinglehoppers. Emily Dale offered from a nearby table. That does sound like something tradeworthy, Fred agreed. Except I've never heard of it. It's from the Little Mermaid, it's a fork. Perhaps a whole cutlery set, George mused. Or peanut butter, Fergus said. Something that they wouldn't eat very often. Bribery with food often works, George agreed. Find out and get back to us. And we shall start with the window, Fred said, standing. Better add a few failsafe charms before we get started, Hubert, George said, standing as well. Ron stared at them. Failsafes? Who are you, and what have you done with my brothers? Well, let's just say it's hard to correct a mistake when 30 tons of water is crashing in, Fred said, which they all agreed was a point. The end result was very impressive, Harry had to admit, especially when they learned that the twins had somehow bribed several mermaids to wear enchanted mirrors during the task. Peanut butter and marshmallow fluff, George told him when asked. Apparently both are a big deal because they float. Harry spent the next several weeks after that reading up on mermaids. Chapter 59, in which Harry is bugged. Chapter text. The second task unfortunately hadn't abated the issue of slander, libel, whatever. Hermione had started getting hate mail, unfortunately, and more than one howler. It had gotten to the point that she and Professor McGonagall had gone to Dumbledore, who set up a drop box for Hermione to avoid any more mishaps like hateful howlers. Harry had asked Blaise next Ancient Runes if it turned to slander if it was a howler, which preoccupied the Slytherin for quite some time, or letters laced with Bartuber pus. It was enough to have Harry steaming and stalking around the Black Lake one Saturday, ranting to Snips and Hedwig fluttering along behind him. Snips had joined Hedwig in the air after Harry had started throwing his arms around angrily, to the point that he didn't even notice Luna until she greeted him. Luna, sorry, didn't see you, Harry apologized. Yes, you looked rather preoccupied, she agreed, handing him a sandwich. Throw it, it'll make you feel better. Harry did so again with the second one she handed him, finally looked at the third one. Peanut butter and marshmallow, he asked. They're for the mermaids, although sometimes the giant squid enjoys them, Luna told him. Sometimes they even put interesting rocks on the shore as thanks. There was one that looked like a Gabberuk. Have you heard of those? Harry admitted he didn't, and spent the rest of the sandwich-throwing session listening about Gabberuks, which were apparently much like regular rooks, except they repeated every bit of gossip they heard. Wonder if Skeeter's won, Harry muttered when they had finished. Doubtful, they don't much care for print, Luna said. Harry considered her as they headed back for the castle. Do you have any theories on her? Dean thinks she's bugging the place, except electronic stuff doesn't work around Hogwarts. Bugs are possible, she hummed. Although I think you and I are discussing two different things. Now it was Harry's turn to explain to her, describing Muggle spy novels and shows, and how they would sneak tiny devices called bugs into phones and rooms to eavesdrop on others. I wonder if perhaps Muggles are magic, and no one believes it because they don't wave wands and say spells, Luna mused when he finished. Sometimes I wonder, Harry said. Might be something to look into on a slow month. Luna agreed, and while the next issue of the Quibbler did focus on magical birds, there was a small article about Muggle bugs with the promise that a future issue would delve further into these mysterious branches of Muggle magic. Hermione, of course, took offense. None of that is magic, though, she protested. It's wires and electricity, and any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, Dean quoted, passing them with Sean on the way to one of the quads. Apparently he had succeeded in getting a football game set up. We're out here using quills, Hermione. You can't tell me that a ballpoint pen is affected by a magical force field. Well, if you'd actually read Hogwarts, a history. Real talk, Hermione. Every time you mention that book, my desire to read it just dies, Harry told her. Hard same, Ron said, turning the issue of the Quibbler upside down to check his quiz answers. Hermione looked offended, puffing up to counter, and then an owl Harry didn't recognize landed in front of him, looking around furtively before putting the letter it was carrying down at his feet before flying away. What was that about? Ron asked, watching it fly away. I don't know, Harry said, stooping to pick the little letter up. Harry, be careful, Hermione counseled, worried. You know what happened with all that hate mail I got? I know, Harry said sourly, turning the letter over, just his name written in neat cursive on one side. Held it to Snips, who sniffed at it, opened it when he gave an affirmative yip. Rita Skeeter is an unregistered animagus. Do with this information what you will. Harry blinked at this, looked around, held it out for Ron and Hermione to read. That makes like the fourth person in a year, Ron said. If I had a nut for every, okay, sure, I'd have 4 nuts, but it's weird that it keeps happening. But wouldn't we have noticed? Harry asked. I mean, in retrospect, Sirius was kind of obvious, but he, who must not be named, was a rat for 13 years, and no one noticed so. Hermione snapped her fingers, pointed at Snips pointing at her. Remember what Dean said about us being bugged, and about how electric stuff doesn't work around Hogwarts? Ron asked wearily. We've been over this. No, but wait, how small can you go as an animagus? Can you say, turn into a bug, a live one? Harry opened his mouth, stopped, looked at Ron, who was coming to the same conclusion, snapped his fingers, pointing. Hermione, you go ask Professor McGonagall. Ron, you get a few other people together and start looking for weird insects. I'm getting this to someone who can do something about it. Dumbledore, Ron asked. That was my second choice. Luna seemed very intrigued by this information. An anonymous tip, how mysterious, she observed, looking the paper over. And no sign of mischief on it. Noggles weren't involved. They weren't on my suspect list, but okay, Harry said, rubbing his arms. I was going to take that to Dumbledore, but I wanted your opinion first. No, Dumbledore is a good choice. I meant, like, what could you do with this information as a reporter? Ah, I could get Fitzherbert and follow you to Dumbledore. I guess that works. Dumbledore seemed very bemused by all this, offered them tea and biscuits before settling down to examine the note. Well, I can say that whoever wrote this has excellent penmanship, he observed, leaning back a little from his close examination to prod the note with his wand. And no hidden spells or hexes. Any ideas? Harry asked. Unfortunately, no, Dumbledore sighed. I don't recognize the handwriting, and unfortunately we have yet to have a spell that identifies handwriting. One of these days I would like to devote some time to puzzling out such a spell, but I fear that by the time I have enough spare time to do so, I'd probably simply devote it to catching up on sleep. That seemed fair to Harry. Now, of course, we have to address the content of the letter, Dumbledore mused, considering it. We hadn't tried talking to it yet, Luna said. That might work. It might. Perhaps it's being recalcitrant because we've been talking over it instead of to it, although accusing someone of being an unregistered animagus. I mean, we do know people who were, Harry pointed out. This is true, although it is a serious commentary on her character and bears asking how we find out. If we cast a spell to determine she is one and she isn't, then she can claim assault, and I would much rather be in the papers for something more eccentric. Assault is very common in the grand scheme of things, Luna agreed. If we can procure the suspected animagus in animal form. Dumbledore started. Snips chirped something, Fox nodding and chirping something to Quincy, who quickly scribbled something down for Dumbledore to read. Ah, Dumbledore noised. Weasley, a crack, and then there was a house elf in the room. Master Dumbledore asked for Weasley. Yes, Weasley, could you ask the house elves to check the castle and grounds for any animagi? We can exclude Mr. Sirius Black from this search, if you don't mind. Weasley will see to it, the house elf said, bowing before vanishing with another crack. I am never going to get used to that, Ron said. I bet having that noise helps let people know they came in, Harry said. Imagine if they just popped in unannounced. Ron considered this. Yeah, that'd probably be worse. It's definitely not recommended for those with older hearts, Dumbledore agreed. Yes, Miss Granger. I'd like to discuss the welfare of the Hogwarts house elves, Hermione burst. Certainly, Dumbledore said, refilling their tea. That should give us something to do while we wait. After about an hour, in which Hermione asked pointed questions that Dumbledore answered mildly, and the rest of them learned that there was an almost yearly debate between Dumbledore and the house elves over raises. And while I've yet to succeed in raising their pay, I'm sure I'm wearing them down, Weasley returned, holding up a jar for Dumbledore. We found this bug, sir, he said, which according to our magic is an animagus. Also, he continued, holding up a diadem. We found this, sir. Ravenclaw's lost diadem, Luna exclaimed. Fitzherbert just about vibrated apart before scribbling with fervor. Question, Ron said. If it's lost, how do you recognize it? Dad's been doing research and trying to recreate it based off of ancient descriptions, Luna said. I never expected to see the real thing. Where did you find it, Mr. Weasley? Weasley blushed a bit at being referred to as Mr. An elf found it in the come-and-go room. Please do not try it on. We detected evil magic within it. Really, Dumbledore said, putting it on his desk and tapping it with his wand. Ah, Ron repeated. Ah, Weasley, will you get Professor Flitwick for me? And perhaps Professor Moody, since I'd like an aura to take care of the unregistered animagus on school grounds. Weasley will do so, Weasley said, bowing before vanishing again. Harry thought the bug looked concerned, but that was small potatoes compared to what was intimated about the diadem. Professor, he said, throat feeling dry. You don't think? I try not to on my time off, Dumbledore said. But in this case I am certain this is another Horcrux. It took quite a bit of convincing on Dumbledore's part to convince Luna and Fitzherbert to not discuss Horcruxes in the Quibbler. After we have them all tracked down, certainly, but I'd rather keep this a surprise from certain parties until then, Dumbledore said. I'm not sure Dad would give a subscription to you-know-who, but we can oblige, Luna said, looked at Fitzherbert tapping at something he wrote. If, of course, you give us exclusive rights on the story and keep us abreast of the situation. How many is this now? Ron demanded. Diary, the locket, the diadem. This is only going to confirm Sirius' theory that Voldemort is a moody teenage girl, Harry said, which is actually insulting to teenage girls, being compared to Voldemort, but at this point I can't say that Sirius is wrong. There's also a problem of a certain someone also overhearing, Hermione said, looking at the jar and its current occupant. Yes, that is a problem, Dumbledore agreed. I'm sure Phileas and Alastor will have some ideas as to what to do. In the meantime, we'll just keep this lid closed. Incidentally, you may want to call off the bug hunt now. They were unable to, and by the next week there was officially a bug club in Hogwarts and an article in the Daily Prophet by one Quentin Quilby, the quick quotes Quill formerly known as Rita Skeeters, discussing her arrest and conviction and Quentin's subsequent taking over of her column. I have questions, Ron decided upon learning this news. I do too, Harry admitted. But hopefully he's better at it than Rita was. As it turned out, Quentin was, and quickly became Harry's favorite columnist after Luna and Fitzherbert. Chapter 60, in which Harry is kidnapped. Chapter text aside from the whole thing with Skeeter and the general hunt for scrolls hidden around Hogwarts, the rest of the year leading up to the final task was fairly calm. The Quidditch pitch had been converted to a hedge maze, and after hearing of the success of the Mermaid Mirrors, Dumbledore asked the twins and company to figure out something similar for the third task. The twins and company had eventually hit upon owls, who would be released after the champions went into the maze and would alternate between circling the maze as a whole and following the champions. Hedwig and Pig both volunteered for this, and the twins and company had eventually worked out tying a little hand mirror to Pig with the concept that he could probably more easily dive into the maze and follow the champions for up-close images. It was all going well, and Harry was vibrating with anticipation along with everyone else at the final task, and the taxing finals. Hermione was the only one actually excited for the tests themselves, and not the relief afterwards. And on the final Hogsmeade trip of the semester, they were mostly spending the nice spring day scouring Hogsmeade for scrolls, as it had been discovered that Dumbledore had apparently hidden some there, too. They had worked out a functioning system as well, the three of them spreading out with Snips flying high overhead and monitoring them, darting down to gather the others if one found a scroll. Harry had just paused outside of a pub named the Boar's Head, wondering if Dumbledore had put a scroll there or not. Eccentricity said yes, while common sense said no, when Crumb ran up to him. "Help!" he gasped, out of breath. "It's Professor Karkaroff. Collapsed. Need help." Harry didn't even think, ran after him, asking what had happened. Crumb shook his head, said they needed to hurry, round a bend, got struck from behind, didn't remember much after that before waking up into a nightmare. Hermione and Ron met in front of the three broomsticks with the intent for lunch, had been chatting with Percy, who was there to supervise the final task, while waiting for Harry to come, when Snips dove at them squawking. "Oh." Harry must have found another scroll, Hermione said, brightening. Ron, however, was frowning as he noted Snip's behavior. "No, I think Harry's in trouble." Snips pointed at Ron, dropping several inches before righting himself and flying off, caterwauling for them to follow. The three exchanged glances, ran after the baffling little creature. It was down a switchback leading to a little graveyard where they found Crumb knocked plumb out. Percy sent a patronus for the castle, citing that something was definitely wrong here, which was when Snips fell to the ground, screaming. "What's wrong with him?" Percy squawked. "I don't know. He's never done this before." Ron squawked back, staring horrified at the writhing little thing. "Ron, help me." Hermione said, trying to grab Snips to keep him from hurting himself. He kept biting at his left wing and was starting to draw blood. Ron whipped his robes off and threw them on Snips, allowing Hermione to bundle him up right as Sirius, and Lupin ran up, demanding what happened as several teachers came from the direction of the three broomsticks. "Where's Harry?" So this was going on the list of Harry's worst days. Following Crumb and getting knocked out from behind, waking up in a graveyard with Karkaroff and a cauldron, getting stabbed, watching something legitimately horrible get dumped into the cauldron, watching something legitimately horrible step out and summon a bunch of like-minded wizards. And now here he was, forced into a duel by Voldemort, who apparently needed to be assured that he was better at the whole magic thing than a 14-year-old. Currently, Harry was hiding behind a tombstone and considering his options, none of which were very good. No one knew where he was. He didn't have a means to get away, too young to apparate, really needed a new plan. "Come out and fight me, you coward." Voldemort stormed. "Yeah, no, if only Sirius were here, or Snips, or hey, creature." Harry hissed, flinched at the crack, and the elderly house elf bowing. "Here you are, Master Sirius is wanting you home," Creature said. "I agree," Harry said, grabbing Creature's offered hand. "What is this?" Voldemort demanded. "Master Harry is required home now," Creature said. "I don't think so," Voldemort hissed, readying his wand on the list of things Harry didn't want to see. Creature getting struck down was one of them. Expelliarmus. It was quick, dirty, and cast in haste, but it flung Voldemort's wand away. The dark wizard looked where it had gone, stunned. "We are leaving now," Creature announced. "No, you are not," Voldemort said, hand out, summoning his wand back. "Creature serves the most ancient and noble house of Black, not you," Creature said. "Master Harry is Master Sirius's godson, and therefore under the protection of the House of Black and its house elf." Here he drew himself up. "And you, sir, are a very bad man for what you did to Master Regulus." Anything Voldemort might have had to say at that was cut off by a burst of magic from Creature, blasting him and his Death Eaters off their feet. And then Harry and Creature were back in Hogsmeade. "Harry!" Hermione yelped. "Here, he's over here." Harry, meanwhile, was hugging Creature tightly after his location registered. "You saved my life, Creature, thank you." "Creature lives to serve," Creature said simply. Chapter 61, in which summer vacation is planned out. Chapter text Sirius went from ecstatic at Harry's safe return to bombastic when he heard just what Creature did. "You!" Sirius exclaimed, swinging Creature around. You brilliant elf, you! You need a raise, foot massage, something." "Creature lives to serve," Creature said, looking abashed when he was put back down. Also, Creature feels he has been given reward enough of seeing the Dark One humiliated in front of his servants. "I agree, that was a bonus." "It does brighten an otherwise dreary day," Dumbledore agreed. Currently they were all gathered in the hospital wing while Madame Pomfrey checked Harry over. "I had had hopes," she said, irritated, "that after getting out of the tournament you wouldn't show up in here for the rest of the year." "I did too, but this wasn't my idea," Harry said, trying to peer at a basket on the next bed over. "Is Snips okay?" "Your familiar's distress was what alerted us to the situation," Dumbledore said. Madame Pomfrey paused her examination long enough to hand the basket over to Harry. "We had to sedate him to keep him calm. Don't jostle him," she ordered before going back to examining him. Harry nodded, looked at Snips to see that his left wing had a large bandage on it. "What about Crumb?" Harry asked. "He was acting weird, and then when Karkaroff, I don't think he wanted to." "Mr. Crumb is over there," Dumbledore said, indicating several beds over. "We have reason to believe that Karkaroff used the Imperious Curse on him to make use of your acquaintanceship. Unfortunately, this leads me to having to ask you about your rather appalling day." "I want names," Moody said gruffly. "At least you have the bright spot of Creature blasting Moldivaldi off his feet," Sirius told him. "That was the highlight of the day," Harry said, grinning a little before sobering. "So, we were hunting for scrolls for the scavenger hunt." What followed was Harry's best attempt at explaining everything that had happened to him, including who was there and where he thought there had been. Moody was scribbling all this down and growling under his breath. Dumbledore looked interested at the account of Karkaroff taking some of Harry's blood, asked to see the wound before Madame Pomfrey fixed it. "Does it mean something, sir?" Harry asked. "It might," Dumbledore said. "What it means I am not sure of yet." "Alas, dear boy, Madame Pomfrey will heal it up perfectly, but seeing as it doesn't seem as useful as my one scar, there should be no loss." "You are not going to tell the London Underground scar story again," Madame Pomfrey said flatly. "It does bear an uncanny resemblance, although its location makes checking it awkward. You were saying, Harry." Harry continued on, describing the cauldron and Voldemort coming out of it, and monologuing before forcing him to duel. Yes, Gryffindor courage should have probably dictated he stand and fight, instead of going yeah, nope, and dodging behind cover. But as he reasoned, discretion was also the better part of valor. "This is true," Dumbledore agreed. "Continue." "Oh, this is the good part," Sirius said, rubbing his hands. Indeed, Harry was grinning as he told them how he had been fretting over the fact that he had no way to escape, and no one knew where he was or how to find him before remembering Creature and calling for him. As he said, Creature blasting Voldemort and his followers clean off their feet was definitely the highlight of the day and quite possibly the week. "Creature lives to serve," Creature said simply. Sitting through finals, and the final task was surreal in the aftermath of that incident, especially with Dumbledore's announcement that Voldemort had returned and unity would be ever more important in the coming years. Most people were baffled and appalled at that statement, and there were more than a few arguments over whether or not it was true. Harry really had to struggle to keep from getting angry at people not believing him, was happy to give an account to Luna, and baffled to give one to Mr. Q. Quilby, although Luna's article beat out the Prophet S by a few days, and was the lead article in a deluxe edition of the Quibbler discussing Death Eaters and potential wild theories. Harry's favorite was that Voldemort had declared Dumbledore his arch-nemesis, because Dumbledore still had a full head of hair and a distinguished nose at his age, while Voldemort had neither. The article's conclusion was that dark magic resulted in a hard life, not unlike Muggle drug use, which an earlier issue had likened to evil potions designed to do harm. Karkaroff was in the wind, and the Durmstrangs were without a headmaster when they headed back, which concerned no one on the ship. Apparently Karkaroff had been singularly useless on the trip there. Crumb informed them, still stiff and awkward around Harry. They had talked. Harry had told him he bore no ill will towards him, but Crumb was still horrified at what he had been made party to. "We're definitely going to have to write him often," Hermione said as they waved the Durmstrangs goodbye. How often? Ron asked, narrowing his eyes at Hermione. Often enough that he knows we don't think he's a bad guy. Ron made a disgruntled noise in the back of his throat, prompting Harry to remind him a professional Quidditch player wants to be your pen pal, which mollified him a bit. The trip back home was strange, mostly because he was having to remind himself that he was not going back to the Dursleys this year. He was going to be next door to Ron, and that was a bright spot in the weirdly dark end to his spring. Seeing where he was going to live with Sirius and Remus almost done, seeing the burrow so close, made a lot of that go away, as did having a big black dog sleeping at the foot of his bed that night. Remus, meanwhile, encouraged him to talk about his frustrations the next evening, reasoning that trying to bury it all would just result in him exploding. And that's just not fair to Creature, Sirius agreed. You have to remember that a lot of people did live under the shadow of you-know-who, Remus told him over hot chocolate. That was a very dark time for everybody. People were dying or just straight up going missing. No one knew who to trust. The idea that he's back is not going to be one people take a shine to, even if it is in their best interest. But Harry gestured fruitlessly, feeling like they had chased this topic in circles. Finding out that Quilby had gotten fired that morning also didn't help matters. Isn't it better to know and be prepared? Constant vigilance and all that. How is Moody doing? Sirius asked. So apparently he's taken this month's issue of the Quibbler to heart and doing that whole survivalist thing that the Muggles are perfecting, Remus said. Last I saw him, he was in a ghillie suit that was threaded through with demiguise hair. So technically you didn't see him. Technically I did not. Harry wasn't seeing the humor in this, which the adults took note of. Listen, Sirius said. Just because the rest of the world isn't being proactive doesn't mean everyone isn't. There's a lot of us getting ready, and I'm thinking we start spending an hour or two each day working on defensive spells and the like. Really? Harry asked, brightening. Yes. Remus did most of the lesson plans. To be fair, most of the Weasley kids will be taking them too for Marley's sanity. Not sure if you can talk Luna into it, but we might as well try to get the whole neighborhood in on it. So at the very least, we have a game plan, Remus told him. You can't control the world, Harry, but you can at least take care of your corner of it and hope the ripples have a greater effect. So that's a chunk of the summer planned, Sirius said. And heads up, there'll be a couple of weeks you spend at the Weasleys while we take care of the furry little problem. Understandable, Harry said, nodding. And I'm sure Remus will want to knuckle down on you for homework. This year is your owl year. You'll want to knuckle down, Remus told him. Hermione's already told us, Harry assured them. Good, Sirius declared. Then all that's left is planning around all the non-serious serious stuff and taking a few moments to laugh at poor Snips. This with an indication at Snips, whom Madame Pomfrey had put in an Elizabethan collar due to his recently developed habit of gnawing at his left wing. Snips growled at him, "Come off it. If our roles were reversed, you'd be taking the mickey out of me." Harry laughed at Snips pondering this and apparently agreeing, looked as sharply as the rest of them at a sharp knock on the door. "Are we expecting someone?" Remus asked. "No," Sirius said, standing and tugging his wand out. "Wand out, Harry. Get behind Remus. Got an emergency portkey above the mantel." "We have a what?" Harry asked. "We started taking some safety precautions after the whole graveyard incident," Remus told him, wand out as Snips darted to Harry's shoulder. "It'll take you to London. Dang it, Sirius, where's that paper?" Sirius waved slightly at Remus for him to be quiet, peering through the blinds, opened the door, stared dumbfounded at the little collection on the front step. "Sissy." "Sirius," Narcissa Malfoy said, Draco Malfoy on the step next to her, Buckbeak and Darby behind them. "May we come in?" "I'll say yes, mostly because I'm curious as to what prompted this social call," Sirius said, sounding as confused as Harry felt. "Is it just you? No nasty surprises? Just the one, but I doubt you can call it that when you've spent the last decade dreading it." Remus glanced between them, looked at Harry. "Harry, why don't you show Draco the side yard where he can station Buckbeak?" he asked. "We can transfigure a stable for him later." Felt like a dismissal to Harry. Glance at Snips, who flew up to the rafters, went out on the steps and bowed to Buckbeak, who returned it, before turning to Draco. "Come on, it'll be around this way." "Good. In the meantime, tea." Harry was dying to know what on earth they were going to be talking about, knew that Remus had suggested this particular yard because it was out of range of the extendable ears the twins were working on. Reached it, finally at least addressed one of the things he wanted to. "So I guess you're staying over for a while," Harry tried. "Maybe," Draco muttered. Harry and Darby exchanged glances, Harry finally turning his attention back to Draco. "So what happened?" Draco grumbled for a long while, Buckbeak nudging him frequently to try to get him in a better mood. "Mother left father," he said finally, starting a circuit around the yard to walk Buckbeak. "I came home to find all my stuff packed, all her stuff packed, and her telling father that she wasn't going through all that again, certainly wasn't risking her son, and if he thought anything of us he'd feel the same way," more dark muttering. "It didn't take a genius to figure it out." Harry could guess. "I saw Mr. Malfoy at the graveyard," he said. Voldemort mentioned him by name. Draco, meanwhile, flinched slightly at the name, but said nothing else for several paces. "It's not like it's a surprise," he muttered finally. "Father was always going on about what he calls the glory days. After second year it didn't seem so glorious. And then he didn't really approve of Buckbeak, certainly doesn't approve of me not living up to the family legacy. Snort, not sure I want to anymore." "Nobody said you had to," Harry pointed out. "That's just what your dad wants, not what you have to do." "Darby has mentioned this, Mr. Harry Potter, sir," Darby said. "But Master Malfoy does leave an impression." Suddenly started slamming his head against the nearest wall, startling Harry. "Bad, Darby, bad." "Oh, leave off it," Draco snapped. "There's no point in punishing yourself over that prat anyway." Harry suddenly felt that maybe he and Draco had startlingly similar upbringings after all. Something about the way that both Draco and Darby reacted to the concept felt uncomfortably familiar to what he experienced with the Dursleys. "Well," Harry said, mostly to fill the silence, wasn't sure what to say past that. "If you guys stay the summer we can play Quidditch. We just have to stay below the tree line. And there's a movie theater in Ottery St. Catchpole. I bet you've never seen a Muggle movie." "If we even stay," Draco muttered. "I have the feeling you will." Chapter 62, in which family trees are discussed. Chapter text. Harry was right. Considering the discussion going on beneath the chandelier Snips was perched in was a more adult version of the one Harry and Draco were having. "My husband, one night, before term ended, he clutched his arm like it was in pain, looked at me and said he's back," Narcissa said, hands folded in her lap as she stared at the tea on the table. "He left then, to attend to him, came back practically crawling from having the Cruciatus curse used on him. He was ranting about how Potter escaped, and how angry he was. I asked him what he intended to do. Sirius and Remus, sitting across from her and leaning on their elbows, both nodded. He says, 'What do you mean?' And I told him. It wasn't just about us anymore, or some glorious pureblood cause. I've never told anyone this. But when he vanished the first time I was relieved, it meant that Draco wouldn't be dragged into all this. When Lucius pulled that stunt with that diary, Draco told me when he came home for the summer that he had been having second thoughts about it all, and I was relieved then, although I couldn't show it. I had to tell him to take some time to reflect, that a Malfoy paid the debt he owed, and that the sooner that was done the better. When he started showing more interest in magical creatures than blood purity, I encouraged it, even if Lucius didn't care much for it. And now this," she shook a clenched fist, head back like she was beseeching for strength. "I already know Draco doesn't have the spine for it, can't harden himself to do what he asks of him. I couldn't watch my son, my only son, be offered up to the likes of him for some ill-gotten hope of power. So I gave Lucius an ultimatum, us or him. His hesitation told me all I needed to know, and when Draco came home, I had everything packed." She hesitated now, not looking at them. "I know you have no desire to help me, but as the head of the House of Black, it's your mercy I'm throwing us upon." Sirius was quiet for a long time after that. Snips wondered if he was waiting to make sure she was finished. "That's a really weird way of asking, 'Hey, I left my husband, can I hang out here?'" he said finally. "You have absolutely no decorum," Narcissa said, frowning, grimaced as she remembered she was supposed to be begging for help. "Sorry it's been." Yeah, I know," Sirius said, waving her off. "I had that month too, we're all snippy. No offense," he added, glancing up at Snips. "So my next big question is, are you guys going to behave yourselves? I mean, I know Buckbeak and Darby will. It's just you and your son that are the big question marks. And also, will you be fine with living under the same roof as half-bloods and werewolves? Remus added. Narcissa rubbed her forehead, like she was having to gather herself for this. If I must, she said finally. Something like the Three Broomsticks or the Leaky Cauldron isn't viable long-term, and the wizarding housing market is. A pain, Sirius asked. Why didn't you kick Lucius out of the house? Pretty sure you could hex him clean out. The other Death Eaters know where the house is, and I didn't want a nasty surprise with him showing up, she said. Trust me when I said I've given this a lot of thought. Sirius nodded, watching her for long enough that Snips was starting to wonder if he intended to turn into a dog and sniff her up and down. All right then, but for the record, there'd better be no blood supremacy nonsense. If you left it behind, you left all of it behind. Also, you have to be fine with living between the Weasleys and the Lovegoods outside a Muggle town. Which is another reason I came here, she said. I can't imagine Lucius bringing himself to come here. Sirius and Remus looked at each other, the former finally shrugging. I guess that's it on my objections. Probably a good thing Remus insisted on us having a guest room. Probably we're going to have to add a second one, Remus said. I can't imagine Draco on the couch, and I'm reasonably sure asking Harry to share a room will end in disaster. We could do bunk beds. Still think it'd end in disaster. I'm talking about us. That's what I mean. Snips sighed and shook his head. Honestly, being away from the Dursleys was supposed to improve their summers. Harry woke up the next morning with a dog sleeping by his bed, took a few minutes to remind himself of what had transpired last night. Ron would probably have a fit. What do you think? Harry asked Snips as the latter blinked owlishly at him. This can only end in disaster, right? Considering Snips stayed on his shoulder as he headed downstairs, that was probably agreement. Follow the smell of coffee, stopped dead at the sight of Mrs. Malfoy staring out the window with a mug in her hand, looking troubled. Master Harry, Creature greeted. What can Creature get you for breakfast? Ah, Harry noised, startled. I don't know, whatever you feel like, thanks, Creature. Creature lives to serve, Creature said, bowing before heading back for the counter. Mrs. Malfoy, meantime, had turned at the conversation and seemed to be taking a few beats to register him. Mr. Potter. Mrs. Malfoy, Harry said, matching her tone and feeling uncomfortable. So, you're living here now? Yes, my cousin decided to take pity on us, she said, returning her attention to outside. Harry blinked. You and Sirius are related, she nodded. My surname before marrying Lucius was Black. It's why I came to the head of the house to beg sanctuary. Harry really wished he hadn't been shooed out of the room last night. Right now he felt lost, and more than a bit baffled, was more than happy to take the out-of-Creature pulling a chair out for him. It is nice to have more of the Black family under one roof, Creature said, pouring Harry some milk. Coffee was a work in progress. A pity Bella can't be here, but... Bella? Harry asked when Creature trailed off with a grimace. Bellatrix Lestrange, Mrs. Malfoy said. My sister. Harry couldn't help the dismayed expression as he linked that name to what Ron had told him before and what she was telling him now. Sirius is related to her. We are, she said, taking a sip of her coffee. All the pure-blood families are interconnected. Even the Mr. Lupin, is a nephew by marriage. So technically Sirius and Remus are related, Harry said, feeling baffled by wizarding family trees. So you're even related to the Weasleys and the Lovegoods. Mrs. Malfoy looked like she had swallowed a lemon and was struggling to keep it down. Harry was kept from commenting by a black dog trotting down the steps, tail wagging like it was helping to propel him forward, eventually turning into Sirius and clambering into the chair nearest the stairs. Hey, Sirius greeted blearily, accepted the cup Creature handed him. Ta, Creature. Take a long drain, blinked at Mrs. Malfoy when he finished. Ah, I didn't dream that part. I know you said last night you wanted no stock put in blood purity, but you could at least cover some of our lineage, Mrs. Malfoy said to him. Ah, you and Remus are related, Harry told him. We are, Sirius asked blankly, looked over when Remus came down the stairs. Hey, did you know we were related? I mean, if you want to get technical, we're related to James too, Remus said, sitting down and apparently taking the conversation in exhausted stride. The Potters were primarily a pure-blooded family. So technically we're all related, Harry said, grinning, a pleasant buzzing feeling building in his stomach as he remembered some of what the mirror of Erest had shown him. Yes, Ron had thought it showed the future, and Dumbledore had told him it showed what he wanted most. But one of the things it had shown was a big extended family. Apparently, that had a grain of truth in it. I mean, if you want to get super technical, we're all related if you go back far enough, Sirius said, gesturing vaguely. Which starts getting weird when you think about it. Organizing family reunions get to be a pain. Don't get me started on group photos. You'd have to take a picture of the entire planet, Remus agreed. They've actually done that, Harry said. Muggles, I mean. Okay, you know what, the Quibbler might be on to something, because if they can take pictures from space, then Muggles definitely have something going on, Sirius decided. What house is this? Draco mumbled, coming down the steps and blinking owlishly, Darby behind him, and apparently the reason he was upright. Do I have time to check on Buckbeak? After breakfast, his mother told him. Darby can check on Buckbeak for you, sir, Darby said, heading for the door. Creature also saved the family tree, Creature said, putting plates in front of everyone. Creature would be happy to show it after breakfast. Pointed look at Sirius as he topped off his coffee. Creature would also like to revisit it being on that wall there. No, 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 Sirius said, waving him off. I have too many memories of Mother standing in front of it to want it in here. At least let Creature bring the silver and dishes in here, at least for special occasions. Okay, that one's a maybe. Creature seemed satisfied with that and went about his business. Harry, meanwhile, had been waiting patiently after his moment of silence, waited until Draco almost had something in his mouth before springing it on him. So you and I and Ron are all technically related, Harry told him. Well, there went my day, Draco muttered. Buckbeak had been happily cantering around the yard when they finally went out, came over and returned their deep bows when Draco waved him over. After that, Mrs. Malfoy refreshed the disillusionment charm on him, and Sirius and Remus transfigured a stable. Draco fed him and made sure he was comfy. After that was the tour of Creature's shed, which, like most magical houses, was bigger on the inside and honestly resembled a small house over any shed Harry had ever seen. Creature was happy to give them the grand tour and tell them all about every bit and barb from the house and introduce them to most of the paintings. Wahlburger Black, Sirius, mother, was indisposed due to her delicate constitution. Meaning, she's still stark raving mad that I sold the house, Sirius said. Oh wow, I forgot about this one. Creature had set up the Black family tree along one massive wall and happily recounted the Black family history as they looked it over, pausing whenever Sirius pointed out a burn mark and said who had been blotted off the tree by his mother. This one was me. She burned it off right after I left. And this one is Andromeda Tonks. Really ought to reinstate her. I have that ability now. Harry found some Lupins and a family named the Peverils, who were then apparently related to the Potters. Now some families are just totally omitted, Sirius explained when Creature finished. The Weasleys, for example, the Potters too, because they didn't buy into blood purity, and when you get obsessed about something you're either with us or against us, that sort of mentality. Sissy can tell you all about it. Don't start, Mrs. Malfoy warned. There's a lot of Death Eaters here, Harry observed, recognizing several names from the graveyard, noted Draco scowling at one of the branches. Well, Mom put a lot of stock in the dark arts, so she'd be most proud of that bunch, Sirius said. Bet she's rolling in her grave knowing that Reggie decided to get out of all that and work for the light instead. That'd be two sons that didn't follow the family business of causing problems on purpose. Do not comment, he told the other two adults. No, he has a point, Remus said to Mrs. Malfoy. That's too easy. I am better than that, she agreed. Ron's expression when he came over and heard the explanation was worth every moment of anticipation, although he wasn't too surprised about being related to the Malfoys. It's one of those pureblood things. Everyone's related to everyone, Ron said, waving that off. Ask Percy about it if you ever need some sleep. He'll talk your ear off over how staying within the families actually weakened magic over the years, and we needed to merry muggles to help keep things working right. Honestly, it's usually about their eyes start falling asleep. He gets the same result with the thin-bottom cauldrons. Did those ever get resolved? Harry asked. I don't know. I can't stay awake for the ending. Look at Buckbeak's paddock. So the Malfoys are really staying here. Just Draco and his mum. She left his dad, Harry said. Took note of Ron's expression. Do wizards not have divorces? which necessitated explaining what a divorce was, after which Ron looked pensive. Honestly, the closest we have to that sort of separation is whatever Zabini's mum has going, Ron mused. Except I'm pretty sure she just kills her husbands. Can't take half if you can't take it with you. Harry agreed on that assessment, looked over when Sirius came up. Ah, good, Ron. I'm going to run to your house real quick to get the rest of your siblings and tell Marley what's going on. Remus is setting up over there by the tree line. One or both of you do me a favor and nip over to the Lovegoods and see if they want in on this. In on what? Ron asked as Sirius bounded off in dog form. Harry brightened at the reminder. Severus and Remus are going to teach us defense. Come on, let's go get Luna. Would we? Oh, right, Ron said, grimacing as he remembered the end of the term. I guess so long as we don't have to do essays, I'm fine with it. Still a little baffled that Malfoy's staying with you guys. Me too, Harry told him as they headed down the road. I'm not sure if I care for Mrs. Malfoy. She feels like Draco before he started on his character development. Maybe she needs a hippogriff, Ron mused. Harry nodded, waited until they were well down the road before making his next comment. Also, technically, we're related to the Lovegoods. Ron pondered this for several yards. Okay, that one might take more processing. Chapter 63, in which practice is done. Chapter text, Mr. Lovegood seemed to go straight past there's an evil wizard, so we're doing defense training to my daughter, gets to hang out with her friends, was more than happy to send her down to the Black House. I'll keep the printer going while you're gone, he assured Luna. Remember, kids, freedom of the press is one of the most important weapons against evil. I get the feeling Mr. Lovegood approved of the American Revolution and their Constitution, Harry said as they walked off. Oh, we did a whole issue on it, Luna agreed. I'll have to sort through the backlogs and show you. That was back when we had a lot of extra copies, so it'd be easy to spare one or two for you. I wouldn't mind that. They reached the yard, bowed to Buckbeak before continuing onto the tree line, where Remus, Sirius, still a dog, Draco, and several Weasleys were gathered. Ah, Miss Lovegood, glad you could join us, Remus said brightly. Okay, so the first lesson we're covering is actually aim, he said, indicating over his shoulder where several moving targets were darting in and out of the trees. Knowing the most powerful spells in the world isn't going to help you if you can't hit the target. So for now, we'll be focusing on getting your targeting precise, and then move up to getting it precise quickly. Someone else isn't going to let you line everything up nice and tidy, don't you know? Sirius shook himself, turned back into a person. Also, we'll be keeping track of who hits what high score gets. I don't know, we'll think of something. You, Sparks, were going to also fold in nonverbal casting, Remus said, mostly because he didn't want to hear a bunch of yelling. Neither did he. Pick a color, let's see. We can't have two reds, one of you change it. Also, Fred, George, no swapping colors in the middle. He knows us too well, Georgie, Fred said to George in an aside. I do. Spread out some, thank you, and okay, go. It became very clear, very quickly, that Remus was right to focus on aim first. Most of the spells missed, and maybe 3 targets were hit in the first 5 minutes. Don't swing your arm around like that, Remus advised as he paced behind them, checking their technique. That'll end up with your spell going wide. Too much flourish. Someone can get in under you. You want tight, controlled, and snappy. After about 30 minutes, the targets started getting hit more often than not. Remus flicked his wand to change the pattern to something more erratic, which left them focusing a bit more intently and reacting quicker, and accidentally hitting a squirrel one memorable time because they cast at movement. Remus called an end to it after an hour, which Harry for one was grateful for. His casting arm had started getting sore about 15 minutes prior, and now was radiating a solid ache through his shoulder. We're going to have to cover exercises to do so, that's less of a problem, Remus said, taking note of several of them massaging their arms. Sirius, who won? Ginny by a very wide margin, Sirius said. I am both very impressed and wildly concerned. I have a list, Ginny told him, blowing on the tip of her wand. A very healthy thing for a young girl to have, George said. We're so proud, Gin, Fred agreed. So long as we're not on it, Ron said. No promises, she said. They practiced with aim a few more days, spent several more days on dodging, and using the environment to their advantage. Afternoons and evenings were spent on homework, and when that was finished, Sirius and Remus took the kids to Diagon Alley to cash in on their wins, Sirius said. Ginny, who had several tallied up, cashed all hers in on a puffskein. Good, Ron said, looking the duo over. Now give it a weird name like you did Pig. I was thinking Arnold, Ginny said, hugging it close. That isn't a weird name. It could be. They were once again in the disguise caps. Fred and George were workshopping, calling them chroma caps, and thus not easily recognizable, which probably saved them a lot of grief. Harry kept hearing snippets from conversations as they passed by, and most of them had the effect of totally incensing him. It took a lot to keep his tongue in his head. Which, as it turned out, was thanks to the Daily Prophet. Rita Skeeter might have been busted and jailed for her unregistered animagus antics, but the paper had taken a decided nosedive when Quentin Quilby got axed. Most, if not all of it, was libel, thank you Blaise Zabini, and what wasn't libel was outright denial. Why are you still reading that? Harry demanded of Remus one morning. Why don't we just cancel that subscription? It's important to know what people are saying about you so you're not blindsided, Remus said, looking like he was sucking on a lemon while reading. Saying that, I'm real close. Grimaced again, put the paper down. Are mail orders a thing? Sirius raised a finger, considered this before pointing. Yes, I mail-ordered Harry's firebolt that one year. Why? Might be worth it to avoid causing a scene at Diagon Alley. This is getting ridiculous. Also on the list of things keeping Harry up nights was a recurring dream about a long hall with a door at the end. He was getting real tired of waking up right before he could open it, and was really wishing his brain would give him something besides a summer rerun. Why do I keep having that dream? He asked Sirius after telling him and Remus about it. Draco was out taking care of Buckbeak, and Mrs. Malfoy had departed for parts unknown that morning. In retrospect, it would have been better if he had asked after coffee. Sirius gave this a long consideration, hand half raised, finally pointed. The hall is your teenage years, and the door is adulthood, and the reason you can't get to it is because you're not an adult yet. Alternatively, it's test anxiety because of your owls coming up. Or it's just a regular dream that just decided to be baffling, Remus mused, looking like he was thinking deeply on the subject. Blue hall and black door, you said. Yeah, why? Harry asked. Not sure. I'd swear I'd seen a hole like that, I'm just not sure where. During your teenage years, Sirius said. You just finally made it through the door. And someday you might as well. Oh, Sirius gave Harry the option of overnighting at the Weasleys or staying home and dealing with the Malfoys next full moon. Harry went with the former, although he collected both Draco and Luna when they went down to Ottery St. Catchpole. Harry had made certain to convert some of his galleons to Muggle notes, and he very much intended to make good on his promise to take his friends to a Muggle movie. So how does this work? Ron asked as they looked at the different posters. Is it like the paintings? No, Harry said, casting about for a better explanation. It's like a pensive. You can see it, but it's already happened, and the people inside can't see you. They picked a blockbuster that was showing for the summer, collected some popcorn, candies, and sodas, and went inside. Harry, personally, was glad that the theater was mostly empty that day. Also, Harry reflected, he probably should have picked something calmer for their first movie than Jurassic Park, and made him wonder what wizards thought of dinosaurs. Fortunately, everyone was more than happy to gab about the movie afterwards, asking around for a bookstore before raiding it for dinosaur books and buying several, Luna happily hugging her copy and eagerly discussing how they were going to cover this in the Quibbler. Ron and Malfoy, meanwhile, had a book open between them and were arguing over it. I'm telling you, these are all just bits and pieces of dragons that Muggles caught sight of, Ron insisted. Look at this, spiked tail, horntail. Ridges, Norwegian ridgeback. Long neck, well, that's most dragons. Same with these sharp teeth and claws and the big wings. They just found dragon bones and decided to make something else up instead. We did our job too well, hiding dragons from them, Fred mused. How do you explain this weird one then? Malfoy demanded, pointing at one of the illustrations. That's still a dragon, Ron insisted. And they come up with the weirdest names for them too. How do you even pronounce this? There's a pronunciation guide right there. They're Xenosaurus, the Rhizinosaurus. Right, so that one was a close encounter, and the biggest thing that stuck out to the Muggle was the claws. And we can discuss this over dinner, George said, making the turning to the burrow with Ginny and Fred. You guys coming? Harry looked at Luna. I'd love to, but I really want to tell Dad all this while it's still fresh, Luna said. We can walk Luna home and come back, Harry told them. You don't have to. You probably do, Fred said. Don't want those raptor things nabbing you. I foresee a bad time for myself in the future, Ron decided as they continued down the road. Considering they were attacked by Dementors on the way, Ron was right on the money. Chapter 64, in which Harry is expelled. Chapter text: Harry was the one to drive them off, able to summon an actual patronus, while Ron managed a faint mist. The four of them ran for the Black House, since it was closest, Draco rattling everything that transpired off to Mrs. Malfoy as Creature prepared hot chocolate and Darby got them blankets. Mrs. Malfoy sent a patronus to Mrs. Weasley, and Mr. Lovegood, to let them know what was going on, was pacing and cursing Sirius and Remus for being unavailable when an owl came in and deposited a letter in front of Harry. Said letter claimed that Harry had violated the reasonable restriction for underage wizardry as well as the statute of secrecy, was expected in a hearing at the Ministry of Magic, and was also expelled from Hogwarts. "I can't be expelled," Harry protested. "I just got all my homework finished. And if you are, then where's my letter?" Ron asked. "I was casting too. It wasn't very good, but it was still enough for them to register it. We were only casting out in the open because of the Dementors," Harry exclaimed. "What were we supposed to do? I guess die. If any muggles saw us, I'll eat my wand," Draco spat. "Enough," Mrs. Malfoy snapped, making everyone look at her. "I will send a patronus to Dumbledore. He's the only one who can expel you, not the Ministry. As for the rest, you'll be able to explain it at the hearing." "What if they don't believe me?" "This is a good point," Luna said. "You have witnesses to the event, and I can certainly testify as to what exposure to Dementors looks like," Mrs. Malfoy said sternly, brooking no argument. "Ronald, Luna, you're staying here for the night. If they attacked once, they'll attack again, and I won't risk sending you out there for the simple reason of going home." No one really had an argument for that, nor did anyone want to go to bed upstairs. They ended up camping in the living room, the boys giving Luna the couch as the rest bundled up with blankets and seat cushions on the floor. "Kind of glad you had that whole thing with the Dementors third year," Ron told Harry once they were settled. "If you hadn't, then Remus would have never taught you that spell, and we'd all be cooked geese." Harry nodded, staring at the ceiling and hating the heavy dead weight in his stomach. He couldn't be expelled. He couldn't. This was his owl year. "Don't worry," Ron assured him. "Dad and Percy will get involved. They know ministry stuff. Percy especially. Think he knows enough to be minister if he could just boot fudge." Harry glanced at the others. Luna was staring blankly at the ceiling, still hugging her book, and Draco was curled up in a ball and not looking at any of them. Ron was right. If it weren't for Remus teaching him the patronus, they'd all be dead. "I think maybe, when Sirius and Remus get back, we ought to get them to cover the patronus charm," Harry said, looking back at Ron. "I agree." "Yes, please," Luna said. Snips sat at the window that night, glaring out into the gloom and trying to spy anything untoward. "What is Mr. Snips looking for?" Creature asked. "Dementors," he told him. "Just outside of a Muggle village, far from where they're supposed to be. This wasn't an accident. Someone sent them here." Creature was silent for a long time. "The Dark One, you suspect?" "I do." He should have insisted on going with them, hiding in a shirt pocket or something. Immediately scolded himself. There was nothing he could do against a Dementor. To beat one off required a wand. And he couldn't help but think that they were a portent to something much worse. Look over at Narcissa pacing, wand out, occasionally checking the kids, tracked her as she paced past himself and Creature, watched as she checked everything downstairs before heading upstairs. "Mistress Sissy blames herself," Creature told him. "She thinks they came here for her." "That would be the one to send them," Snips said. Creature nodded. "It might be time to increase the scope of the secret order of familiars." Snips nodded, teeth itching at the thought of Voldemort out there. He had promised to keep Harry safe, and that massive threat on the horizon would not be tolerated. It seems so. Hedwig was more than happy to collect Pigwidgeon and fly off to inform the other familiars, although Snips had to wonder what a bunch of small, slightly magical creatures could do against Voldemort. Although, he reflected, looking back at the sleeping teens, the man had been felled by less before. Sirius was apoplectic enough to match Molly Weasley when he came back a few days later. "Dementors? In this neighborhood?" he demanded. "How this isn't an accident?" "This isn't an accident. Someone sent them. I wanted to wait until you came back before leaving," Mrs. Malfoy said. Obviously, it's too dangerous. Let's start with obviously this doesn't happen all the time. You misunderstand, she said. I'm the one putting you in danger. You know that. Stop, Sirius said, pointing at her. You do not get to blame yourself any more than Remus gets to blame himself for the full moon being this week. Gesture vaguely, thinking. It might not be you. They might have been after Harry. Timed it for when they knew we'd be gone. Dang it, maybe I should have done a Fidelius charm. So this is my fault, Harry asked. You have enemies. You should get used to this, Mrs. Malfoy said. Okay, you chill, Sirius said. Remus, you translated that yet? It's a ministry letter. It doesn't need translation, Remus said. What I don't get is the expulsion. The hearing makes sense. Harry did technically violate the reasonable restriction of underage wizardry. Because of the Dementors, Harry protested. Yes, which when told to the hearing will be accepted as a reasonable breach. The problem is, this doesn't pass the smell test, Remus muttered, one hand to his jaw as he glowered at the paper announcing when the hearing would be. It feels like being railroaded, even though all the proper language is used. And then Dementors would only be away from Azkaban at the behest of the Ministry, or Moldivaldi, Sirius pointed out. They worked for him before. We think you ought to teach everyone the Patronus charm, Harry told Remus. I agree. First, though, everyone to the Weasleys. I want to catch Percy before he heads out, and Arthur should be coming in about now. They filed over to the burrow, everyone with wands out and eyes scanning, reached the Weasley kitchen without incident. Malfoy, Ron greeted coolly as the adults convened. As you can see, we don't all sleep in one room. Malfoy grimaced at him. Now you want to bring that up. I missed my shot last time, seeing as how we were all too preoccupied with the whole attack at the World Cup. Back to our current problem, Harry said. Yeah, Ron said, indicating where Percy was examining the papers and giving his opinion. I agree, it feels like you're being railroaded. I should have gotten a similar letter and I haven't yet, and I don't think I will either. They want you specifically. Why though? Because you said you know who was back, Malfoy told him. No one wants to hear that news. Plus with what Skeeter was saying about you, Skeeter was discredited. The damage is already done. Which was when an owl flew in and landed next to Harry, handing him a letter before sitting there patiently. Boy, I hope it's not more bad news, Harry muttered, opening it. It was not. Dear Harry, depending on your progress with your homework, it may either please or disappoint you to know that you are not, in fact, expelled, as I do not consider defending yourself against Dementors to be a proper violation of school policy. Please send via return owl the date of your hearing. I would like to inform Minister Fudge that student enrollment at Hogwarts is not under ministry prerogative. I would inform him myself, but he seems to be ignoring my owls. Sincerely yours, Professor Dumbledore, Headmaster of Hogwarts P.S. I do hope the rest of your vacation has been well. Well, that's good to know, Harry gusted, relieved. This isn't, Malfoy said, reading over Harry's shoulder. Dumbledore is head of the Wisengamot. Fudge can't afford to ignore him. Again, I cite the railroading, Ron said, from Harry's other shoulder. Harry sent the date with the owl, finally turned to the rest of the room busy outlining a war plan. You are going, Mrs. Malfoy was telling Sirius, like there was even an argument about that. As head of the House of Black, you have a seat at the Wisengamot and have weight. Hi, Harry said, raising the hand with the letter. Sorry, I just got word from Dumbledore that I'm not expelled. Good, Remus said. It would have been boring without you, Harrikins, George agreed. So next question, what's the Wisengamot? Harry asked. It's like Wizard Court, Ron told him. And you won't be appearing in front of them, Mr. Weasley assured him. It'll be a simple hearing in Madame Bone's office. She's one of those tough but fair types. She'll most likely dismiss the case as soon as she hears about the Dementors. You will still be going with your guardian and a legal retainer, Mrs. Malfoy said. Why? Harry asked. I mean, I get serious, but it's important to throw your weight here and show that you mean business. That's not exactly necessary, Mr. Weasley started, which also means it's not unnecessary either, Mrs. Malfoy said sternly. You haven't moved about much in those upper circles, Weasley. I have. They wait for any sign of weakness and then they strike. And on that awkward note, I'm off to work, Percy muttered. Don't worry, Harry. I'll get to the bottom of this. Mr. Weasley waited until Percy was gone, turned his full attention on Mrs. Malfoy. You're right, he said. I don't much move about in those upper circles. Being cutthroat never interested me. It takes more work, and it's more rewarding to be kind instead. Kindness gets you more in the long run than meanness does. Maybe I don't get the aplomb, but I sleep better at night. I suggest you start thinking the same." Harry and Ron exchanged glances at Mrs. Malfoy getting color in her cheeks at that dressing down, but she managed to swallow down whatever retort she evidently wanted to give. "You still need the retainer," she said. "I'll contact mine. He'll be willing to work on short notice." "You're going to name drop, aren't you?" Remus sighed. "Don't question it if it works." Chapter 65, in which Harry lawyers up. Chapter text: They spent the following week working on the Patronus charm. Most everyone was able to manage a fine mist by the time Harry's hearing came round. "Remember," Ron said, as Harry set everything out for the next day. "Think happy thoughts, really happy thoughts." "You're hearing that in your sleep, aren't you?" Harry asked. "I am, and I wish it'd stop," Ron admitted. Which fair Harry was too, and it made the dreams of the hall and door really weird. The next day saw Harry and the three accompanying adults. Mrs. Malfoy had insisted, apparating to the designated spot behind the leaky cauldron before entering with the intent to meet the promised retainer. "Mrs. Malfoy, always good to see you," he said, bowing. "And then Sirius Black saw the news. Sorry you didn't hire me," he said, shaking Sirius' hand. "And I'm going on a limb and saying you're a Weasley." "Arthur Weasley, misuse of Muggle artifacts," Mr. Weasley said, shaking his hand. "All right, one of those cases crossed my desk. And this'll be my client. Mr. Potter read much about you." "Okay," Harry noised, unsure how he was supposed to react to that. "Yes, indeed, your case will be a marvelous feather in my cap. Probably the only one you'll need too. Good grades and clean school record work in your favor." "This is Harold Rodriguez," Mrs. Malfoy introduced. "My cousin will be pleased to know that I chose him as my retainer due to his track record and not his pedigree." "Oh, it's the big one," Sirius said, staggering against the bar. "I accepted based on the nature of the case," Mr. Rodriguez said. "It's not often divorce happens in the wizarding world." "No?" Harry asked, surprised. That little bit of interest carried them to the ministry, Mr. Rodriguez filling him in on a basic overview of wizarding law and where and how it diverged from Muggle law. "Don't tell Mrs. Malfoy, but I have studied Muggle law," he told Harry in an aside. "It's fascinating to see how the inclusion of magic affects everything." Which, honestly, Harry agreed with. "You're going into your owl year, correct?" he asked Harry as they took the elevator into the ministry. "Ever give any thought into going into law?" "ERNO," Harry admitted. "I haven't really given any thought into what I'm going to do after school yet." Mr. Rodriguez nodded like this was expected. "Well, if you do, come to my office. I'm sure we can take you on as an apprentice." "Nice feather in your cap," Harry couldn't help but ask. Mr. Rodriguez laughed, though, so it felt like he had avoided being sassy. "I'm going to have to get to work soon, but I can escort you to Madame Bone's office, and you can go over everything one last time in her waiting room," Mr. Weasley said, looked over, rather startled at Percy fighting his way through the crowd to them. "Percy, what? The meeting?" Percy gasped. "Tried to contact you. Fudge changed the meeting time." "What? To when?" Sirius demanded. "Right now," Percy said. That caused everyone to bolt after Percy, who also had the bad news that the meeting location had been changed as well. "They want him in the Wisengamot chambers. It looks like they want to do a full trial for an underage magic hearing," Mr. Rodriguez asked, appalled. "I don't know. I got Weatherby stalling. Come on, hurry." "Sissy, that means now," Sirius said, tugging Mrs. Malfoy along. "I don't run," she protested. "I suggest you learn before you miss the whole thing." They all crowded into another elevator and rocketed down, Percy holding the lever so it wouldn't stop at the other floors. Blind panic was starting to eat at Harry's thoughts. Look up, decided to focus on the little paper airplanes flying over their heads. "Interoffice memos," Mr. Weasley explained when he pointed them out. "We used to use owls, but that turned out to be very messy." The elevator eventually stopped at a hole that made Harry want to send the elevator back up, not be dragged down it, and past several halls with dingy blue lighting and black doors. Nor did he like being parked in front of a very imposing set of doors, fussed over one last time, and barely given a chance to ready himself before Percy pushed the doors open. "And see," Weatherby asked, indicating them as they filed in. "Now I find it strange that they got Mr. Weasley's owl and not yours, Minister." "They didn't get mine either," Percy groused at Weatherby under his breath. I had to meet them at the landing. Come on, we're in the way. Ah, good luck, Mr. Potter. Harry felt very much like he was going to need it. They were in a circular arena and sharing space with a chair he felt no compulsion to sit in, surrounded on all sides by high chairs with severe-looking witches and wizards in them. If the desired effect was to make him feel like a bug under a magnifying glass, it succeeded. Hey, I remember this, Sirius said, kicking the chair as Mr. Weasley headed to sit by Percy. Some of the chains on the chair rattled menacingly. What is this, Fudge? Scare them straight. Mr. Black, your presence is not required, Fudge said, glaring. Seeing as how Mr. Black is Mr. Potter's legal guardian, his presence is required, Mr. Rodriguez said, already pulling a file out. And who are you? Harold Rodriguez, Esquire. I'm here to represent Mr. Potter during his hearing. And why does he need a lawyer? I wondered that myself until I realized we started trying cases of underage magic in front of a full Wisengamot trial, Mr. Rodriguez said, looking around. Fudge glowered. And Mrs. Malfoy, your reason for being here? I was in the area and witness to the events immediately after the Dementor attack, she said, causing several intakes of breath. I know what the after-effects of Dementor exposure looks like, and can assure you that Mr. Potter's use of the Patronus charm was justified. You cast a Patronus? A woman near Fudge asked, looking over her spectacles at Harry. Yes, Harry noised, figuring he ought to answer. A corporeal Patronus. I'm not sure what that is. Prongs, Sirius told Harry in an aside. It's the difference between the mist and an actual thing. Oh, then yes, I did. Woman perked up, as did several others. At your age, can we see? That is not the reason we're here, Fudge snapped. As I understand it, the reason we're here is because Mr. Potter cast a Patronus charm and did so outside of any wizarding habitation, Mr. Rodriguez said. That is the charge. Would it not behoove you to check that he could cast the spell before wasting everyone's time further? That, Cornelius, stuff it, the woman that Harry was starting to really like said. Mr. Potter. Personally, the fresh memory of the minister being told to stuff it was a nice enough memory, and within moments there was a glowing white stag cantering around the room. Scattered applause sounded, quickly silenced by angry glares. Well, there you have it, Mr. Rodriguez said when the stag finally faded. Mr. Potter can indeed cast the spell. The charge of underage magic stands. Now we can go into whether or not it was justified. Fudge was starting to turn an interesting shade of purple Harry had often seen on Vernon, deepened as the door behind them opened again. Ah, I hope I didn't miss too much, Dumbledore said, coming in. I thought I had arrived early, but I suppose that's what I get for thinking to have mastery over time. Dumbledore, Fudge said flatly. Ah, Mr. Rodriguez noised, apparently getting more puzzled by the proceedings the longer they went on. Professor Dumbledore, not to be blunt, but why are you down here? Oh, Cornelius thought to aid me in my quest for spare time by relieving me of my duties as Chief Warlock, Dumbledore told him. Unfortunately, this backfired, as now I have even less time. Can we move on? Fudge ground out. Yes, the one woman said. Mr. Potter, can you explain the events of the night in question? Harry had been coached in how to do this. No spending time building up, just that after a day with his friends, they had been heading home for the evening, that he had wanted to walk his one friend Luna Lovegood home, since she lived a bit farther and would have been walking by herself. And the four of them, himself, Luna, Ron, and Draco, he clarified when prompted, had been beset upon by Dementors. Harry had been the one to summon the corporeal Patronus to drive them off, while Ron had been able to produce enough of a mist to keep them at bay and off the others. There was a funny sort of cough when he finished, and some toad-looking woman with a little black bow leaned forward. Perhaps I misheard, she said, in a sickly sweet voice that made Sirius growl beside him. It sounded as though you said that Dementors were near 3 wizarding abodes. And near a muggle village, yeah, Harry said. But now, my dear, that is simply impossible. The Dementors are in service to the Ministry. They wouldn't leave Azkaban. Unless prompted, Sirius pointed out, ignoring Mrs. Malfoy's pointed look. I mean, you know there's someone out there who'd be happy to hire them. Oh, not this nonsense again, Fudge exclaimed. You know who is not back. Actually, I was pointing out that the Ministry was just as culpable. Careful, Fudge. Saying that it wasn't Moldy-Valdy is saying that someone at the Ministry did it instead. Fudge stood angrily. I will not have this nonsense. Then why did you make it nonsense to begin with? the one woman demanded. This should have been a hearing between myself, Mr. Potter, and his legal guardian. Madame Bones, that's quite enough. No, it isn't. There's no grounds for all this. Mr. Potter has a tendency to show disregard for the rules in times past, the Toad Woman said. Not to mention the rumors. You mean the ministry-sponsored tripe from the prophet? Sirius asked. Sirius, calm down, Mrs. Malfoy hissed at him. You're out of order, Black. Fudge said, pointing the gavel at him. Point of order, Mr. Rodriguez said, flipping through his file. I've looked through Mr. Potter's school files. Aside from a couple of detentions, he seems to be a model student. He looked at Dumbledore for clarification. I nor any of the other members of the staff have had any concerns or complaints regarding Mr. Potter, Dumbledore said, temporarily throwing Harry. Had he ever referred to him by last name? I believe the last complaint was by our caretaker, Mr. Filch, regarding tracking snow in during the winter, but that is a common complaint as doormats can only catch so much. What about the Triwizard Tournament? Fudge asked. That I didn't enter, Harry said. And point of order, Weatherby said, standing. And which, once entered against his will, he happily forfeited his position in once we were able to find a legal out for him. Because he realized what was being expected of him, Fudge started. As I recall, Mr. Potter was quite adamant from the beginning that he had been entered into the tournament against his will, Dumbledore said. Granted, I am an old man and my memory isn't what it used to be, but I'm certain there are others who would verify that. Yeah, me, Remus, Percy, Sirius listed. Blowing up his aunt, Fudge said. As I recall, you were happy to wave that off as an accident, Dumbledore said, talking to snakes. As it turns out, Animagi and Quickquote's quills can understand them too, Harry said. So it's not as special as you think it is. Fudge looked like he was winding up for something else, was cut off by Madame Bones. Okay, that's enough, she announced, tugging her glasses off and looking at Harry. Mr. Potter, seeing as how your use of magic was self-defense, it was justified and therefore nothing to charge you with. Your case is dismissed. We need to move on to the issue of Dementors, where they're not supposed to be. You can't just dismiss a case when the rest of the Wisengamot is here, Fudge protested. Fine. All those in favor of dismissing the charges against Mr. Potter. The majority raised their hands. All opposed. A few raised their hands. There. The Wisengamot finds Mr. Potter not guilty, case dismissed. I knew there was a reason I liked her in school, Sirius mused. They dispersed quickly after that, Dumbledore citing other business that needed attending to, and Percy and Mr. Weasley having to get back to work. The rest of them had no desire to linger after that. I sat in that chair before, Sirius said as they headed for the elevators. Trust me, you were smart to keep standing. At least Madame Bones had the sense to put a stop to all that, Mr. Weasley said, looking over his shoulder. A full trial for something that simple, and we gave them something else to chew on, there's that. You laugh, but Umbridge looked like she was ready to start chewing on you. Who? Harry asked. The Toad Lady, Sirius told him. She's terrible about anyone she doesn't deem a pure-blooded wizard, makes Sissy here look like an amateur. Mrs. Malfoy looked like she was about to comment, stiffened upon spotting something else, making Harry follow her line of sight, grimaced himself when he saw Mr. Malfoy over talking to Fudge. Mr. Malfoy saw them as well, stayed where he was when Fudge left. They really had to go by him to get to the elevators, Harry bracing himself for something as they neared. Mr. Rodriguez inserted himself between the Malfoys before anything could be said. I'm sorry, but as per the previous meeting, you're not to speak to or otherwise contact Mrs. Malfoy without both myself and your own lawyer present, Mr. Rodriguez told him. You understand the scandal that would result otherwise. They were in the elevator before anything else could happen, Mrs. Malfoy sagging against the wall as they went up. Are you all right? Mr. Weasley asked her. She nodded, eyes closed, still angry. Well, Mr. Rodriguez said after an awkwardly silent ride up. I must say, Mr. Potter, this certainly ended up being the event to go with the name. What? Harry asked. What I mean is, when I heard it was you, I was intrigued, but the event attached was a simple underage magic charge. I wasn't expecting today to go quite like it did. Neither did I, it just keeps happening. Oh, Mr. Rodriguez said, handed him a card. Well, if anything like this happens again, you just send me an owl. Mrs. Malfoy, since I have you in London, would you care to come to my office and knock out a few particulars? That would be fine, she said, following the lawyer through the crowd. Ah, hey, wait, thanks, Harry called after them. Both of you. Mrs. Malfoy looked a little startled, but Mr. Rodriguez smiled and waved before they were both lost in the crowd. So that was a surprisingly decent fellow, Mr. Weasley said. Until we get his bill, Sirius decided. Chapter 66, in which film is prefected. Chapter text arriving back at the Burrow had a lot of delirious cheering, mostly from the Weasley twins and Ginny, who kept dancing around the living room chanting, "He got off, he got off, he got off." "Will you three do that outside?" Mrs. Weasley demanded. "And Harry, dear, we knew you would. It was a justifiable use, after all. A full trial, though," Remus said, staring at nothing. "That doesn't bode well." "You said from the beginning that they were railroading him," Draco pointed out. "I bet they were expecting him to come in by himself," Ron mused. "And then, when there was a full team, Fudge was caught so flat-footed he didn't know what to do." "That was about the sum and scope of it," Sirius said, nodding. "By the way, Draco, your mother is with her lawyer. She should be back later." Draco nodded shortly, mouth in a thin line. Harry reasonably guessed that the whole divorce was still a raw wound. "So now what?" Harry decided to ask, trying to move the conversation on. "Well, now that we have aiming down, I feel like we can cover dodging in greater detail," Remus said. "Probably do that tomorrow. Sirius will teach you kids a paint spell today, so we'll know who got hit by who. Please keep the colors you've been using. Yes, I'm talking to you, Fred George." "I see we have a reputation," Fred said, exchanging fist bumps with George. "A well-earned one, I'd say," George agreed. The paint spell reminded Harry enough of paintball to compel Fred and George to go to town after he mentioned it to learn more of the sport. Harry hoped he hadn't started something that would end in multicolored disaster. The next day did sort of end in multicolored disaster, as dodging was still a concept and not a reality. Harry was very glad for cleaning spells that night, less glad at the fact that the twins had included glitter in their paint spells. At least it gave them more impetus to avoid being hit, and each day Remus set up a different obstacle course to keep them on their toes. It wasn't until well into July that they actually moved on to covering spells. Each day had them practice aiming and dodging, and then a different spell that would improve their abilities to defend themselves. "Does anyone know why we didn't cover the shield spells before we covered dodging?" Remus asked. "Because Pratigo loses against a killing curse," Ron guessed. "True, very true. Matter of fact, most dark spells eat straight through most conventional shield spells. It's also a difference in mindsets. If you use a shield spell, you're more likely to stand your ground and stay in one spot, making you an easier target. If you get used to the idea of not being where the spell is aimed, you're less likely to get hit. Are you all with me so far?" They were, and by the end of July, they had functioning little wars in the obstacle courses. Last one standing one. Get enough wins before the end of summer break to get a grand prize of your choosing. Sirius was reasonably sure the extra impetus helped more than nebulous dark threat on the horizon. Which, true. Harry, personally, didn't need more impetus than that, and he wasn't sure what he'd ask for if he won the grand prize, but the competitiveness helped with the drive to improve. Currently, the one to beat was still Ginny. She had had a close encounter with Voldemort earlier than any of them, barring Harry's whole beat him as a baby thing, and thus had a greater reason to be taking this seriously. Or maybe this was just the end result of 6 older brothers. Fred and George were the second runners by dint of constantly teaming. Days where they were the last ones standing usually ended with them going back to back, and then marching off to imitate old duels, and occasionally resulted in them knocking each other out. Harry, Ron, and Draco were basically tied for third place. Ron had the most improvement out of all of them, and Luna didn't seem terribly concerned with winning. But Harry felt that they had all made leaps and bounds, sentiments shared by the adults. Staring out his window one night as Snips dozed in his bed, Harry was sure that while he probably wouldn't get the security of this time last year, or maybe earlier, back until Voldemort was taken care of, he did feel a little safer. "I'm sure there's a good long word to describe that, but right now I'll settle for confidence," Sirius said when Harry tried to articulate this to him. "Just make sure that doesn't tip over into cockiness. I'm told that ends badly." "It does," Remus called from the other room. The Weasleys having a functioning TV now also meant that Ron was starting to be intrigued by the concept of movies and recording. especially after they proved that going to the movie theater did not result in Dementor attacks each time. With homework out of the way, their spare time was dedicated to rooting through Mr. Weasley's collection of Muggle artifacts until they found a camcorder, and then dedicating their time to getting it operational. It was towards the middle of August that they finally succeeded. "Okay, so the red light means it's recording?" Ron asked, aiming the camera. "Yeah," Harry said, looking at the little screen as Ron put the lens to his eye after having the correct one pointed out. "Wave, Snips." Snips didn't look very impressed, although Pig puffed up, hopping up and down in excitement. "So how does this work? It's like a pensive, kinda, you said." "That's the closest comparison I can figure," Harry said. "Because see, you record the thing you're seeing, and then later you can play it back, and it's not like the portraits where you can interact with them. So yeah, pensives are the closest comparison." "Pensive. How do you pluralize it?" "No clue," Ron said, trying to maneuver out the door. Harry helped to steer him. "Ah, nice view." Turned and backed up a little so he could film Harry. "Say something, Harry." "Hi, my name is Harry Potter and you're watching Magic TV," Harry said, waving. "I'm outside my friend Ron's house. His family calls it the Burrow. My house is down the street. My godfather, Sirius, is wanting to call it the Dog House, but my uncle Remus is trying to hold out, and my aunt, she agrees with my uncle. Also, technically, we're all related, so that's cool. I dare you to call Mrs. Malfoy Aunt Sissy. I gotta think of the best time to spring it on her. This is Snips," Harry said when Snips flew out and onto his shoulder. "And okay, here's a question. You know how the textbook says most muggles can't see magical creatures or places. Is he even going to show up on the camera?" "I mean, he's showing up on the little screen here," Ron said, checking the camera. "Maybe it's different since we're wizards and we know what we're looking at. Wish there was a way to test this without violating the statute of secrecy." "I mean, we could always say it's special effects," Harry said. "Oh, hey, Buckbeak. He's got a disillusionment charm on him. We could see if he shows up on film." "Yeah," Ron said, following Harry up the road and filming as he went. "Down there is Ottery St. Catchpole. It's the local village and very muggle. Pretty sure everyone just figures we're the oddballs who live out in the country." "I mean, we are," Harry agreed. "And apparently they think we've been shooting fireworks off up here." "I guess it's easier to say fireworks when we're not hollering spell names," Ron said. "Hey, I wonder if spells would show up on the camera." "I bet that make a good business if they did," Harry said. "Muggles have how-to videos of a ton of stuff. Imagine how-to videos for spells." "Hey." Buckbeak did indeed show up on the camera. To everyone's bafflement, Draco needed the device explained to him, was posing next to Buckbeak minutes later. "Okay, Malfoy, tell us about hippogriffs," Ron said, vaguely gesturing with a hand. "Ah, okay," Draco said, glancing at Buckbeak like he'd know what to do. "So this is Buckbeak. He's a hippogriff. They're very proud and handsome creatures. First rule of hippogriffs is that you need to be very polite to them, no name-calling or anything. And they won't let you near them unless you show you can be courteous, so when you approach you have to stop at a respectable distance and bow." "Right," Ron said, arm waving as he tried to grab Harry. "Harry, demonstrate this." "Right," Harry said, waving Ron off. "Approach, bow deeply, back off a step," as he straightened and watched Buckbeak. "So if a hippogriff doesn't bow back, you need to retreat. But Buckbeak knows Potter, so yeah," Draco said when Buckbeak bowed. "Now Potter can approach, and hippogriffs really like being petted here and here. They love being scratched wherever they can't easily reach, but they get nippy if you get behind them. And they like it when you tell them how handsome they are," Harry said, petting Buckbeak. "Well, yeah, that's a given." After the how-to video on hippogriffs, they spent a chunk of time playing with the zoom lens and the other aspects of the camera. Harry had the distinct impression that Ron might be pursuing this as a full-time hobby, especially that evening when they managed to get it to play on the Weasley TV. The population of the doghouse also watched, which was also how Mrs. Malfoy learned of Aunt Sissy. "Do shut up, Sirius," Mrs. Malfoy said, glowering at Sirius going down howling. "Sorry, Mrs. Malfoy," Harry said, wincing. Mrs. Malfoy had the lemon look as she brushed off her lap, obviously debating. "I suppose if a staying is long-term, we'd have to have some level of familiarity eventually. And we're all family here, aren't we?" Mrs. Weasley asked brightly, something in the way she was smiling at Mrs. Malfoy daring her to disagree while still feeling good-natured. "I suppose," Mrs. Malfoy sighed finally. The letters arrived a little before Hermione was scheduled to. Remus considered the book list, looked at the newspaper, finally looked at Creature. I don't suppose you take care of the school supplies if we ask nicely. Creature will be happy to, Creature said, putting a healthy stack of pancakes and bacon on Harry's plate. Darby will be happy to assist, Darby said brightly, saluting and splashing a bit of orange juice. And if Darby fails, Darby will cast himself from the tallest tower Darby can find. That's not necessary, Sirius said, looking at Mrs. Malfoy. Sissy, what are you teaching your house elves? It can't be that bad, Mrs. Weasley said. They were eating over at the Burrow this morning. Creature, we've talked about taking over my jobs. Creature agrees that there have been discussions, Creature said. I don't know if it's that bad, but I don't trust that we'll all be able to keep calm heads if we do go, Remus sighed, looking at the prophet. Padfoot, I'm finally changing my vote. Excellent, Sirius said, thumping the table before pointing at Mrs. Malfoy. You're the only holdout. Give me that, she sighed, taking the paper from Remus. The rest of you might wish to stay uninformed, but there are things I want to keep an eye on. Like Quidditch scores, Ron said, coming downstairs. Oh, hey, we got our school letters. We did, Draco asked, coming in from tending to Buckbeak. Anything good? What does defense look like? Well, it's not Lockhart, Harry said, looking at the list again. Creature and Darby will be handling the shopping, Creature said, putting a plate in front of Draco as he sat down. Creature and Darby will also be willing to handle the Weasley shopping if needed. Thank you for offering, Creature, but it's no bother to me, Mrs. Weasley told him. Creature doubts this, but Mistress Weasley may do as she pleases. Is there anything saying we can't shop with her? Darby asked Creature in an aside. But anyway, Mrs. Weasley said after their moment of silence, I can get that done today. Do a bit of other shopping I've been meaning to do. Give me your lists, kids. Ron. What's the matter? This prompted Harry to look at Ron, who had been very still and quiet ever since sitting down and opening his letter, staring at a little badge he was holding. Harry blinked when he realized it was a prefect badge. This sank in for everyone else a beat later. Mrs. Weasley and the twins couldn't have had more opposite reactions if they had tried. Oh, Ron, that's so wonderful, Mrs. Weasley cried finally as she hugged him, the first coherent bit she had been able to say. That's everyone in the family. What are we next-door neighbors? Fred asked, breaking off from his wailing to look affronted. We're shacking up with you guys, apparently, George said to Sirius and Remus. We need to add more guest rooms, Sirius said to Remus, not missing a beat. I told you one extra room wasn't going to cut it, Remus shot back, as Percy thundered down the stairs with his wand drawn. I was finalizing my report. What happened? He asked, scanning the room from a few steps up, looking ready to fling hexes first and take names later. Ron made prefect, Mrs. Weasley exclaimed. Percy had to take a beat to process this, was vaulting over to Ron and tackling him in a bear hug when he did. Finally, he gusted. Thank you for following my influence. I was so worried. Hey, we followed your influence too, George protested. Yeah, Fred agreed. We'd ask ourselves, would Percy approve of this, and if the answer was no, we'd go for it. Ron still seemed very dazed when Percy let go of him to jump up and down excitedly with Mrs. Weasley, moving on to exclaiming the news to Mr. Weasley when he came in. Harry waved a hand in front of Ron's face to see if he was still in there. Why me? Ron asked finally. It's not like I'm some standout student. Why not, Harry? Probably the honorary Slytherin thing, Harry said. And the fact that everyone thought I released a great big snake second year. That probably put a dent in it, Draco agreed, opening his own letter now that the jostling had died down. I have concerns about the quality of prefects this year. Froze with his hand in his letter, turned it upside down to send a badge similar to Ron's tumbling to the table, but in Slytherin green and silver. Remus looked at Sissy. Will you be joining them then? He asked, indicating the older Weasleys. Oh, we can celebrate in a dignified manner, she started. Get her, Sirius ordered. He and Remus bounced up and dragged her over to join the celebrations. Okay, now I'm concerned about the quality of prefects this year, Ron said, leaning around Harry to look at Draco. I'm disappointed in you both, really, George said, shaking his head. Just wait until Donald hears about this. At least Harry's still got his priorities straight, Fred said. Now if only he were more ambitious in his pranking. You two still have me, Ginny pointed out. This is true, dear brother, Fred said. You're our only hope, Gin, George told her. Harry debated on whether he should introduce the Weasleys to Star Wars next, moved on to baffled and something a bit more snarly in his chest as he looked at the prefect badges. He had given absolutely no thought to who would be the new prefects, had had far more important things to worry about. If he had been thinking of them, would he have wanted them? That responsibility. It was a question that bugged him as everyone ate, chatting excitedly about the new prefects. "This is excellent, though," Sirius said, reaching across the table to clasp Harry's hand while also patting Remus back. "Having a prefect friend really helps with getting away with stuff." "Sirius," Mrs. Weasley scolded. "I'm only speaking from experience." "So you were a prefect?" Draco asked Remus, still apparently on the fence about him. "Yes," Remus said, reminiscing. "I think Dumbledore thought I could rein in certain people. Obviously, I failed miserably," he said, cutting a look at Sirius. Snips on the table growled at that. "You'd try. We'll give you an E for effort," Sirius assured him. "So you weren't a prefect," Harry said to Sirius. "Oh, good grief, no. Me and James spent too much time in detention to qualify. Sad to say, we were the incorrigible ones." That made Harry feel a bit better, knowing his father hadn't been prefect either, turn his attention to Percy, excitedly going over prefect duties regardless of whether Ron or Draco was paying attention. "And I haven't even mentioned the amenities," Percy said. "Being prefect affords you certain benefits, like the prefect's bathroom." "Oh, I remember that bathroom," Remus sighed, looking like he was going somewhere else for a minute. "Hundreds of taps, each one with different soaps, a bath the size of a swimming pool," Sirius agreed, apparently in that same place. "Okay, now I'm jealous," Harry told Ron. "Oh, that reminds me, benefits of prefect friends is they have passwords for places." "I'll be sure to hook you up," Ron told Harry. Mrs. Weasley and the house elves left shortly after breakfast, but not before dropping another bombshell on Ron. "I mean, we got Percy an owl," she was telling Ron, who still looked lost. "Mum, what are you talking about?" Ron asked. "Getting you a gift for getting prefect." "On that matter, I should probably come with you," Mrs. Malfoy said, getting up from the table. "Anything specific, Draco?" "Ah," Draco noised. Saddle for Buckbeak." Mrs. Malfoy made a face at that one. "That won't be today," she pointed out. "I'll have to get someone out here to measure Buckbeak." Trailed off at Draco's expression. "Fine, I suppose that was your big ask." Draco cheered, ran out to tell Buckbeak. Ron looked at his mother, stepped a little closer so the others wouldn't overhear so much. "UMA new broomstick, not one of the really expensive ones," he said quickly at her expression. "But like the new clean sweep, that'd be really nice." "Creature, go with her on that one," Sirius said. "We can go halfsies and cash in Ron's wins on that." "Yes, please." When the women and house elves left, Ron and Harry looked at each other. "Congrats on making prefect," Harry told him. "Why, yeah, I wasn't kidding, though. I figured it'd be you," Ron told him. "It probably is the whole honorary Slytherin thing," Harry decided. "I mean, it's hard to have a Gryffindor prefect who talks to snakes." "That probably does put a cramp in it," Ron agreed, thinking. "So, want to try filming something else? Maybe see if we can't do one of those how-to videos." "Or we can film the new prefects," Harry said, grinning as he followed Ron up the stairs. "Gotta get it now before the glow wears off." "Oh, I bet it starts as soon as we get on the train," Ron sighed. "Yeah, let's do it." Hermione arrived a couple days later, having been briefed in the Malfoys staying over but nothing else. Thus, when she stepped out of the fireplace, having taken one from the leaky cauldron, to see three boys standing behind a table with two prefect badges, her default response was a blank look. "You have to guess," Harry told her. She blinked, looked at the badges. "Well, I'm going to say Draco gets the Slytherin one," she said. "So, Harry?" she asked, looking at him. "Actually, Harry got the Slytherin one," Ron said as Harry shook his head. "Something about the whole honorary Slytherin thing." "Ron and Draco," Harry clarified for her. "Wow," she noised, sounding genuinely surprised. "That is not who I would have picked." "We agree the quality of prefect took a dive this year," Draco said. "Have you seen the new books yet?" "Yes, and the defense one is absolute rubbish," Hermione said, tugging her trunk over to the group of trunks waiting by the door and thus missing the exchange of sickles. "Slinkard doesn't know hexes from jinxes from countercurses, and if the book is anything to go by, we won't be doing any magic at all." "In our owl year?" Ron asked. "That's so stupid. Okay, so I'm very glad we practiced all summer, because from the sounds of it, defense this year is going to be a wash." "Oh yes, tell me about this. Is it too late to participate?" Hermione asked, looking at Remus when he came in. It's good to see you too, Hermione, he said, bemused. And if you're asking about training, we were planning a flurry rush, whatever you want to call it, for the final week. I can give you a crash course real quick. Emphasis on crash, Ron agreed, rubbing his head. Hermione agreed on that too, was absolutely livid when she heard about the Dementors and the hearing. Well, of course, they let you off. There's hundreds of examples of such magic use being justified, and then Dementors. The Patronus charm is probably going to be in that crash course, Harry said, nodding when Mrs. Weasley asked if he wanted more potatoes. We got to that right before dinner, Remus said. She's got the mist started at least. Hope you kids are ready, though, Sirius said. This week cinches it, the war to end all wars, for all the beans and marbles, or however that saying goes. Not like that. Make sure you duck if you see Ginny pointing your way, Harry told Hermione. She fights dirty. You don't fight dirty, you fight to win, Ginny said, passing the peas. A very true axiom, Fred agreed. And just wait until they see what we've got in store, George rejoined. By the night of August 31st, Harry was very much looking forward to the train ride the next day, wondering if anyone would notice if he just laid flat on his back in the hall. In the meantime, putting his new standard Book of Spells book in his tote bag so he could look into summoning himself an ice pack later. I tell you what, Harry told Snips, CRR-ing at him. I feel really, really good about this year. Hopefully that would stick. Chapter 67, in which fifth year starts. Chapter text September 1st had the usual scramble for everyone to get together and go to King's Cross. Ron, Draco, and Hermione with their badges already pinned to their shirts. On the one hand, Harry wasn't surprised that Hermione had gotten prefect, but on the other he wondered when on earth she'd ever manage the time to do that on top of her studies. Ron, meantime, had packed up his film equipment, which Hermione was severely questioning as they went through the barrier onto platform 9¾ proper. You know, it's not going to work at Hogwarts, she was telling him. What was that you were telling me last year about no electronic stuff working at Hogwarts? Well, you can help me figure it out, Ron shot back. Besides, some of it isn't super electronic, the film part at least. Wait, does magic affect the strips? No, magnets do. Hi, Blaze, Harry greeted, waving as he recognized the other teen. Hey, Harry, Blaze called back, waving before approaching. You know you're crazy. No more than usual, Sirius said. A little bit of madness is important in a growing boy. I'm told it's called hormones and they can be grown out of, Remus assured them. Now all of you behave yourselves, Mrs. Weasley told them. No shenanigans. This with her looking directly at Fred and George. Sure thing, Fred assured her. Can't guarantee how Donald, Edmund, or Hubert will act, though, George said. It was well after they left the station, and Ron, Hermione, and Draco went to the prefect's car before Harry could turn back to Blaze. What's this about me being crazy, and how is this different from past years? It's in the Prophet, Blaze said. They've spent the summer trying to convince everyone you're cracked, and Dumbledore is an old fogey. I think Dumbledore falls more under eccentric, Luna said, hanging around them over following the remaining Weasleys through the train. You should dump the Prophet anyway. We finally did, Harry said. Took forever to convince Mrs. Malfoy. So the Malfoys are living with you guys, Blaze said as they worked their way through the train looking for space. I'd heard the rumor. Well, technically everyone but Mr. Malfoy, which reminded him. Also, you and I are related. Blaze gave him such a long look that Harry was finally able to translate the expression as a you for real. How do you figure? Saw a wizarding family tree this summer, Harry said, which wasn't a lie. And basically all pure-blood wizards are related, and half-bloods possibly, so somewhere back there were related. Blaze looked like he was trying to reason through that, finally accepted it. At best you're like an in-law, still counts. And you're doing a good job of living up to the cracked description. It's usually better to embrace it, Luna said. I'm going to go find people who still talk sense, Blaze said, walking off. There's got to be someone on this train who qualifies. Hi, Neville. Hey, guys, Neville greeted brightly, running up to them. Hey, look what I got for my birthday. Did you kill someone? Blaze asked, looking at the potted thing. It looks like someone's kidney. I have questions on how you would know that, Harry told him. Better you don't know. It's called Mimbulus Mimbletonia, Neville said proudly, indicating the plant that did indeed look like some diseased organ. My Uncle Algy got it for me. It's supposed to have a bunch of magical properties. Like with potions? Harry asked, wondering if this would show up in their class this year. Maybe. It's got a defense mechanism. Hold on. I'm just gonna step in here real quick, Blaze decided, stepping into a loaded compartment. Snips slipped in after him before he shut the door. About a moment later, Harry regretted not doing the same. Sorry, didn't realize it'd be that, well, vehement, Neville said as Harry felt for his wand, unable to see for the stinking goop covering his glasses and most of his face. Don't worry though, stinksap's not poisonous. Blaze slid the compartment door back open. Well, you made the right decision, Harry assured him after doing Scourgify. Yeah, I think I'm going to stay in here, by now. So what do you think? Harry asked as Snips lighted back on his shoulder. Maybe a component for dung bombs. That could be it, Neville said. Probably ought to keep this away from Fred and George then. What is that on Snip's neck? Harry glanced at Snips. Well, he's been chewing on himself, so we swapped out the Elizabethan collar for a Victorian one, figured it'd be better for his ego. The way Snips growled at him suggested this wasn't the case. The highlights of the trip, aside from the stinksap, was Ron and Hermione finding them and letting them know who the other prefects were. Ron cited Pansy Parkinson being the other Slytherin prefect as evidence for his claim that the position was going downhill. But other than that, Harry didn't really have any complaints. Ernie Macmillan, Hannah Abbott, Anthony Goldstein, and Padma Patil were all people he knew at the very least incidentally, and he thought they were at least decent picks. He'd have to wonder at the logic of Parkinson being picked, though. Other than that, he had no reason to be concerned about the semester until they arrived, and it was Professor Grubbly-Plank escorting the first years instead of Hagrid. Wait, what happened to Hagrid? Harry asked, trying to crane his neck to see as the press of students shuttled them to the carriages. The last Scroot didn't eat him, did it? Ron asked. Pretty sure it didn't. At the very least, Hagrid had been alive and whole enough to send him the newest copy of Fantastic Beasts for his birthday, complete with a bookmark marking the new edition of Blastended Scroots, which did indeed merit a 5 in the ranking. Last I heard, he was heading to see Nora again. So that's it then, Ron decided as they settled in the coach for the ride up to the castle. Hagrid decided to go native and live with the dragons. I knew this day would come. You knew this day would come. Neville asked, concerned. Yeah, Charlie's been threatening it for years. I'm sure dragons have a complex society, Luna said. It's just that they don't want wizards finding out about it. There's a quibbler issue about it, I'm sure. Speaking of, I have questions about the issues this summer, Neville said. The Dementor one or the Dinosaur one? Luna asked. Well, starting with the Death Eater one, but yeah. Well, the good news is we're here, Hermione said, peering out the window at Hogwarts. So we're relatively safe now. Where we've had secret chambers, Dementors, tournaments, Ron listed, we also have Dumbledore. That does make a difference, Harry agreed as they filed up the stairs. Ron, you can leave that with the luggage. Nah, Ron said, keeping his camera case glued to his side. Until I get it to my dorm myself, this doesn't leave my side. Honestly. What is that anyway? Neville asked. Camera, Ron said. Hermione's gonna help me get it to work here. No, I won't, Hermione said. Like you're really going to pass up the opportunity to perform an impossible bit of magic. He's got you there, Harry told her. The Sorting Hat's song joined Hagrid being missing on the list of concerns tallying up for Harry, as was the squat toad sitting at the teacher's table. That's Umbridge, Harry said when he recognized her. She was at my hearing. What's she doing here? I saw in the Prophet that Fudge passed a new law giving him the power to appoint a Hogwarts teacher if Dumbledore couldn't find one, Hermione told them. That might be why the letters went out so late this year. Sounds like overreach, Ron said, stretching before admitting defeat. Pass the potatoes. Picking this apart lasted until after dessert, when Dumbledore stood and ran them through all the usual bits of announcements for the new semester. Furthermore, after the success of the scroll hunt last year, we have decided to revisit the concept with field guide pages this year, Dumbledore said. There will be pages flying around that you can gather in the field guide binders included with your letters this year. You can collect them with the summoning charm. Professor Flitwick has informed me that he generally teaches this charm starting in 4th year. So if anyone from the younger years wishes to participate, Professor Flitwick's office hours are. Ron echoed, as stumped as most of the hall at Dumbledore cutting off. Harry followed Dumbledore's line of sight to see Umbridge, had to take a few beats to realize she had stood up. A few more baffled beats when Dumbledore ceded the stage. May I introduce Professor Dolores Umbridge, the new defense teacher? Thank you for that stirring speech, Headmaster, Umbridge simpered. And for the introduction. It's so nice to be back at Hogwarts and to see so many happy young faces. Harry looked around and decided that she must be looking at an entirely different hall. No one seemed happy at having the treasure hunt announcement derailed, nor being talked to like they were just starting kindergarten. After the first few minutes of the wandering speech, however, Harry decided that several others had the right idea of sleeping off dinner. He distracted himself by looking at how everyone was reacting, could maybe count on one hand how many people were actually paying attention. The teachers didn't count. He was pretty sure there was a professional courtesy thing there. Hermione he could get. She could stay awake through Professor Binns' classes, but she looked plenty furious as she listened. That cow, Hermione hissed as the teachers started clapping and Umbridge sat down. Ooh, I'm up what I miss. Ron squawked, startling upright. Hermione glared at him. Couldn't you at least try to pay attention? Hermione, I spent that whole speech looking at everyone else, Harry told her. You and maybe 4 other students were the only ones beside the teachers actually paying attention. Hermione grumbled something that was probably disparaging under her breath before inhaling. The Ministry is trying to take over Hogwarts. Why would they want to do that? Harry asked. Didn't you pay attention to history in primary school? I was kind of encouraged to underperform in primary school, Harry said, grimacing. Why, oh, Hermione said, cottoning on. It's a tactic dictators use. If you can control the mindset of the young generation, then you can control where the populace goes. And with Dumbledore specifically saying that you know who is back, and Fudge not wanting to believe that. I still don't get that, Harry said. Fudge isn't even remotely ready for a threat like that, and he doesn't want to be a wartime minister, Hermione said. I don't doubt he— Oh, bother. Ron, get up. Why, what are we looking at? Ron asked, looking around. We have to escort the first years. Right, come on, you midgets, up this way. Ron. Well, they are kind of titchy, aren't they? You are supposed to be setting an example. First years this way. First year Gryffindors, Harry clarified when he spotted some kids wandering over from the Hufflepuff table. If you were sorted in Hufflepuff, you have to follow Ernie and Hannah over there. What, they're wandering already? Ernie asked, hustling over. I forgot I had to be specific, Hermione sighed. Congrats on making prefect, Ernie, Harry told him as he gathered up the Hufflepuff first years. Thanks, Ernie said, puffing up. Was a nice surprise. Hope I can live up to it. Come on, first-year Hufflepuff's got to show you how to get in our dorm and tell them about the kitchens. That too, I'll point it out to you on the way. Come on. Right. Harry, will you carry this for me? Ron asked, handing his camera case to Harry. Turns out I'm gonna need both hands for this. Got it, Harry said, noticed the way some of the first years were staring at him. Hey, if you feel this way about 5th years, there's no way you'll be able to handle 7th years. You go on ahead, Harry, Hermione said, counting off heads. Password is Mimbulus Mimbletonia. It is, Neville asked, sounding like Christmas had come early. That's great. I can remember the password for once. Great. We can go test it out. Come on, Harry said, carting Ron's camera case. Honestly, things were going pretty well until that little blow-up between him and Seamus. Chapter 68, in which owls are discussed. Chapter text. Seamus got ready in record time and left, which promised to get old real quick. It's like he thinks he'll catch the weird disease from me, Harry said as he went downstairs. Ignore him, Dean told him. Seamus will come round eventually. I don't get it. Seamus knows me. His mother knows me. Why would he think that? Some people believe everything they read, Neville said, following Dean out the portrait hole as Harry detoured over to where Ron was slouched against a table. Ron greeted blearily, head propped up in his hand. Hermione made me get up early, said we had to be handy in case the first years needed directions, like they didn't get a map with their letters. Did you remind them about the map? Harry asked as Ron struggled upright. Yeah, told the boys that map had better be glued to their hand until they got the basic navigating down pat, which was when a first year tugged on Ron's robe. Mr. Weasley, I can't find my map. Seriously. It's only been one day. What's your name? Harry asked the first year. Oi, mate, it isn't a multiple-choice question, Ron said after a few beats of the kid stammering and staring at Harry. What's your name? Ah, Tommy Dawson. Harry tugged out his wand. Akio, Tommy Dawson's map. Caught it when it came zooming out of the boys' dorm, handed it over to Tommy. "How do you do that?" Tommy asked, taking the map. "It's called magic. You'll be learning a lot of it here," Harry told him. "Actually, that's the one Professor Flitwick is offering to teach people during his office hours. Did we ever get those?" "I think we were too busy picking apart Umbridge," Ron said. "You can ask Professor McGonagall at breakfast when she gives you a schedule. Come to think of it, we need to get to breakfast and get our schedules." Tommy ran ahead of them as they headed down to breakfast. "Seriously, why didn't you make prefect?" Ron asked. "You handled that better than I did." "I still think it's the honorary Slytherin thing," Harry told him. "Plus the bit about talking to snakes, and then second year, and fourth year probably put a dent in it too. I'll maybe give you the Slytherin thing, but the rest is really reaching." "Yeah, well, wonder what our schedule's going to look like." First up for them was History of Magic. As it turned out, Ron took the opportunity to catch up on his sleep, apparently oblivious to Hermione's seething. "What are you going to do if I decide not to share my notes with you this year?" she demanded after class. "Fail my history, owl," Ron said promptly. "Does anyone even go for a newt in that class?" Harry asked. "Percy did, but he's also a masochist who said that there were only 5 people total at the newt level." "Well, the good news is, potions is up next," Harry said, cutting off what promised to be a sharp rebuttal from Hermione. "Should be interesting." Unlike History of Magic, potions started off with Professor Slughorn lecturing them on the importance of their owl year. "You see, once we get to the newt level, we're really going to be dealing with some dastardly difficult potions," Slughorn told them. "So dastardly, in fact, that I can't in good conscience accept anyone who has anything less than exceeds expectations in their owls. Student safety reasons, don't you know? I do have confidence in you lot, but I can't deny that some of you won't make it if you continue on as you've been doing. I have remedial potion lessons up here with the lab times and my office hours. Make sure you copy them down." Once that was done, they moved on to covering the draft of peace, which, according to Slughorn, was likely to be on their owls, but not guaranteed. Snips had, upon them entering the dungeon, flown up to perch Professor Slughorn had set up for him. But once they got started, he took to circling around the dungeon and swooping down on anyone who started to stray from the instructions and towards certain doom. Neville, unsurprisingly, got a lot of Snips' attention. Slughorn, meanwhile, ambled about the class, looking in on their potions and quizzing them on where they were on the draft and how the ingredients specifically affected the potion. Harry, who had spent the past several years being interested in the topic and under Snip's spare tutelage, did fairly well, possibly only second to Hermione, who had been neck and neck with him for tops in potions for a while now, although it was starting to become easy to tell who would be having to do extra studying. "I know Moonstone is used in Wolfsbane, but isn't it associated with lunacy too?" Ron asked Harry as they supervised their simmering cauldrons, Harry with one eye on his watch. "How is that calming? And then what happens if you use actual moon rocks?" Harry asked. "Isn't the moon made of green cheese?" "No, Muggles went and visited it back in the 60s. It's pretty much made of rocks and dust. Plus there's no air up there, so there's no wind, so the footprints are still up there." "That's you're making that up. Muggles did not walk on the moon, and if they did, how?" "Rockets," Harry said. 7 minutes, add the hellebore. "Very good, very good. Hey, Gregory, make sure you've got the times for the remedial potions classes. You too, Vincent, Neville. Everyone get a vial of your potion, label it with your name, put it up here on my desk," Slughorn announced at the end of the lesson. "Homework is 12 inches on the properties of Moonstone. Have it ready by class on Friday. Harry, can I borrow you and Snips for the remedial classes? I'll be needing extra eyes. Hermione, I'd like you too, but I understand if prefect duties on top of everything else is too much." "I'll see what I can do, Professor," Hermione said brightly. "I might be able to spare some time for that. My school schedule isn't as busy as hers," Ron offered. "Snips and I will definitely be there," Harry assured him. "Excellent, excellent," Slughorn beamed. "Off to lunch then. Don't want to keep you too much longer. Also, I'll be sending you letters on when the first Slug Club meeting is this year. Want to see everyone's schedule first." They did finally extricate themselves and hasten to lunch, Ron fishing out the copy of the Quibbler he had gotten that morning and propping it up so he could read while eating. Hermione rolled her eyes, turned her attention to Harry after their moment of silence. So you and I have ancient runes after lunch, she told him. Probably we get to hear about how important our owl year is going to be, Harry predicted. Pity I can't jot that down for divination, Ron sighed. At least I know 2 classes I can dump next year. I honestly don't know why you keep at it, Hermione told him. Free tea. Ron, there's tea in front of you right now that you're not paying for. Rolled her eyes at Harry, blinked at him scowling as Seamus sped by. What's the matter with you? Seamus, Harry sighed, explaining what had happened last night and that morning to her. Well, that doesn't surprise me, she said, shaking her head. Lavender was the same way before I shut her down. What I don't get is why. Haven't you noticed what's going on in the Prophet? Honestly, I stopped reading when they canned Quentin, Harry said. At least the Quick Quotes quill had found employment with the Quibbler, and was apparently more than happy to write scathing articles on the various ways the minister was corrupting the free speech which witches and wizards so rightly deserved. Which true. Remus and Mrs. Malfoy were the only holdouts at our house. Fudge has been spending all his time trying to discredit you and Dumbledore, Hermione said, flipping a copy of the Prophet open and pointing at some of the articles. He started out pretty subtle, but now they're not even trying to hide it. Look here. Dumbledore is far past his prime and gone from eccentric to downright dangerous. His balmy behavior is a threat to good wizards everywhere. And then you Harry Potter has let his fame go to his head, happy to foment panic with threats of you-know-who returning after his attempt to steal glory with the Trousered tournament fell through. Okay, now Harry was running hot. The tournament I didn't enter, that I wanted out. I was able to get out of with everyone's help. That tournament. Yes, that's the one. This is so stupid. Why would I want to fake that? I don't even like all the attention. I didn't do anything as a baby, and I didn't get myself out of the graveyard, Creature did. Although now it explains all the rebuttal articles in the Quibbler, Ron said, turning a page of the magazine. I can't believe you read that, Hermione said to him. Bold words from someone holding a copy of the Prophet. Besides, I thought Skeeter was arrested, Harry said. Apparently she started a trend, Hermione fumed. It's not like there's only one scummy journalist out there, Ron pointed out. Ah, finally, some clarification on Raxperts. Ron, look, the Raxpert thing has been bugging me for years. This is why you're still in divination, Ron. Honestly, the reason I'm still in divination is because there was no topping you storming clean out of class that time. Hermione, at least, seemed mollified as they headed for their next classes. Chapter 69, in which walkouts happen. Chapter Text Defense was the class that everyone was looking forward to with trepidation. Umbridge was a new teacher, and thus an unknown. Saying that, her ordering them to put their wands away and pull out their textbooks never boded well in anyone's experience. Nor was her insistence on treating them all like they were 5 years old, asking them to parrot back, "Good morning," like they were still in primary school. Your education in this subject, Umbridge said, flicking her wand at the blackboard and filling it with a list titled Course Objectives, has been woefully below ministry standards, and although having a new teacher every year may be partially the cause, the quality of teacher has definitely had something to do with it. Frauds, paranoid madmen, filthy half-breeds. What was that last one? Harry asked, suddenly running hot. Mr. Potter, in my class, when you ask a question, you are to raise your hand, wait to be called on, and then ask your question in a respectful tone. Are we clear? Harry set his mouth in a thin line, swallowing his first 3 responses. Mrs. Malfoy had been trying to cover wizard etiquette over meals, and while Sirius had declared all of it balderdash, some of it at least had sank in. My apologies, he said. She smiled and started to turn. But I understand it's poor form for someone to reduce themselves to slurs, especially in a professional setting. Her attention snapped back to him. I beg pardon. Filthy half-breed is a slur. It should be beneath you, and yet you used it in a school setting. That's not befitting your position as teacher, Professor. Plus, using it to describe one of our better teachers is really insulting, Dean said, raising his hand. So is calling Moody a paranoid crackpot. Technically, she called him a madman, Ron said, turning in his seat to address Dean. Plus, there was that bit where he was played by a dead Death Eater for half a semester. Yeah, that probably didn't reflect too well on the ministry. Silence, Umbridge seethed. All of you will read from chapter 1 in your textbooks. There will be no need to talk. Harry decided that was probably the best they were going to get and cracked open his textbook. About 5 minutes into it, he wondered if the author had channeled Professor Binns for how dry and boring it was looking for the author's info page when he noticed that Hermione had her hand up. He wasn't the only one, and within 5 minutes, the vast majority of the class felt that watching Hermione try to get Umbridge's attention was more interesting than whatever was supposed to be going on with basics for beginners. Umbridge sighed, finally turned her attention to Hermione. "Yes, miss." "Granger, ma'am, Hermione Granger," Hermione said. "Yes, what is it?" "I have a question about the course objectives." "Oh, thank you for reminding me. I want you all to copy these down in your notebooks, preferably in a place where you can see them every day to help you focus." "Yes, that's all well and good, but I don't see anything about using defensive magic." "Excuse me. I don't see where you've clarified that we'll be practicing defensive magic." "You don't need to worry about that. Understanding the theory is enough." "I disagree," Hermione said, causing Umbridge's nostrils to flare. "In no class at Hogwarts is understanding the theory enough. Yes, it gets us part of the way, but understanding how summoning or levitation charms work doesn't mean we get it right on the first try. Perhaps your teaching was substandard then." "I dare you to say that to McGonagall," Ron said to Dean, snickering. "Oh, I know you're trying to get me killed now," Dean laughed. "Silence," Umbridge seethed. "Miss Granger, we will not be practicing the act of casting spells within this class." "Hold it," Harry said, raising his hand. "It's our owl year. Half of the exam is going to be a practical where we show that we can cast these spells. You, a ministry official, are asking us to go into a ministry exam and do these spells for the first time in the exam itself. Mr. Potter, seeing as how you are neither a teacher nor a ministry official, your opinion is not the one we are going with." "You didn't answer the question," Ron pointed out, hand raised. "And as the teacher, you're supposed to provide clarification," Harry rejoined before she could counter. "Otherwise that's you being substandard, isn't it?" Umbridge did not look pleased at having her wording thrown back at her. "When the time comes, if you understand the theory well enough, you will be able to practically apply it. So your answer to my question is yes, basically." "Mr. Potter, that will do," she said sharply. "I don't think it will," Harry said, "because that's just considering our exams. We haven't even discussed practical applications outside of class." "There will be no need for practical applications outside of class. Do you really think you're going to be attacked?" "Yes," Harry said. "Seeing as you were at my hearing, you'd know that I was attacked by Dementors this summer. If it weren't for a previous defense teacher teaching me the Patronus charm, you might know him. He's the one you used the slur about. I and 3 of my friends would have most likely been kissed by them. Not to mention the whole thing with Voldemort earlier this year." Dead silence. 10 points from Gryffindor, Mr. Potter," Umbridge hissed finally, before turning her attention to the rest of the class. "The rest of you may have heard that a certain dark wizard has returned from the dead. This is a lie." "No, it isn't," Harry said. "You have already lost 10 points, Mr. Potter." "I'm aware. I have nothing to gain about lying about Voldemort returning," Harry said. "And even if he wasn't back, last I checked, some Death Eaters attacked the Quidditch World Cup final last year, when Voldemort was still absent, and the Ministry was supposed to have a ton of security going. Voldemort being back or not, there's still the matter of being able to defend ourselves. Detention, Mr. Potter." Harry had the feeling this had been coming up. No, that had everyone looking at him. "Excuse me," Umbridge demanded. "No," Harry repeated. "For you to give me detention, you would firstly have to be a teacher, and I would have to be your student. You've already made it plain you're not actually teaching us anything. Furthermore, since this is a school for wizards, and a wizard is defined as someone who uses magic, you denying us the opportunity to use magic means we're not wizards. Therefore, not only can you not assign me detention, I really have no business being in this class." And with that, Harry packed up and headed for the door. "Man's got a point," Ron decided. Similarly packing up, Dean whooped and clapped before following suit. By the time Harry made it to the first corner and turned, it was to see that most of the class was filing out as well. Snips had given him a couple corridors before making an inquiring noise. "Might as well go to the library," Harry told him. "We can get started on homework. Probably the Giant Wars one first. Might as well get the one I won't like out of the way." Harry had picked a few books out and was sitting in a corner working when movement made him look up, thinking it was one of the other students who had also walked out and decided to start on their homework. He was entirely unprepared for it to be Professor McGonagall. "Mr. Potter," she said over his startled babbling. "May I sit?" "Oh, why, yes," he noised, not sure he was liking where this was going. She sat, looked at him over her glasses. "I just received a visit from Professor Umbridge." "Oh, okay. She says that you were argumentative in class. A little. That you were disruptive. Probably. That you claimed that he who must not be named is back." Harry looked at her blankly. So we call Pettigrew that. You know who?" "Oh, yeah, I did. Did she give you detention?" "She tried." "Did or did you not accuse her of being fraudulent in every sense of the word?" "Yes." "Did you lead a walkout of her class?" "I think that was the end result, yes." She nodded, checked for Madame Pince before pulling a tin out of her pocket and putting it on the table. "Have a biscuit, Mr. Potter." "I what?" "Have a biscuit," she said, popping the lid off the tin. Harry checked for Madame Pince as well before taking a ginger newt, carefully breaking the head off before giving it to Snips. "I want you to tread carefully around Professor Umbridge," McGonagall told him. Why?" "Use your sense, Mr. Potter. Her being here is indicative of a larger problem." "You did listen to her speech at the start of term, didn't you?" "I tried," Hermione translated. "The Ministry is trying to control Hogwarts, right?" "Indeed," she sighed. "Umbridge has the might of the Ministry behind her, and she has every intent of bringing it down on all of us. Angering her could cost you much more than house points and detention." "I don't have to go to detention with her, do I?" Harry asked. I sort of just flat told her no. "I wouldn't recommend not attending her classes at the very least," she told him, standing up and collecting her tin. "If she marks you as tardy for the majority of the year, then you have to retake it, and I don't think I have to tell you that that won't reflect well in your owl year." "Probably not," Harry agreed. "But there's gotta be something we can do." "Short of turning the Ministry against her, I'm at a loss," McGonagall said. "Well, no, I'm not, but advocating illegal activities is not a proper thing for me to suggest. Keep your head down and study on your own time, Mr. Potter. She'll be gone soon. Hopefully," she added as she left. "Yeah, hopefully," Harry muttered at Snips, nibbling on his cookie, pondered on what Professor McGonagall said as he finished it up, finally stood and headed for Madame Pince's desk. "Can I help you?" she asked finally, after a lot of angry muttering under her breath as she sorted through books. Harry caught what kind of nonsense is this censorship, that's what. Being senior undersecretary to the minister means you're involved with a lot of things and have your name attached to them, right? Harry asked her. "It does," she said, looking at him sharply. "Why? How'd they put it back in the day? Sticking it to the man. Righteous." Chapter 70, in which Harry gets political. Chapter text. Harry filled Hermione and Ron in on his plan, and they spent the next week doing as much reading as they could. Ron, meanwhile, also wrote Percy on ministry stuff, requesting that he, as Ron put it, nerd us. Percy accused him of making fun of his position, but obliged. The end result was the three of them prepped for next Monday. Umbridge zeroed in on Harry that defense class. "Finally decide to join us, Potter." Waited for a response. "Mr. Potter." "Sorry," Harry said. "But as per your motion in 87, I think, you propose that wizards not interact with non-magical folk, be they muggles or squibs. Since you're not advocating for the use of magic in your class, that therefore renders me non-magical, as per our last conversation. So in us speaking, you're actually in violation of your own proposal." Umbridge looked like she was fuming again already. "Detention, Mr. Potter." "Actually, since Hogwarts is for witches and wizards, and you have thusly rendered me neither, you can't actually assign me detention," Harry pointed out. "Matter of fact, as I said last week, there really is no purpose for being here other than to keep you from marking me tardy. And if you do, I'll just walk out again. Since then, there really isn't a reason for me to stay," he pointed out as she got ready to mark him. "Fine," she spat. "Anyone else have any smart remarks to make?" Hermione hesitated before raising her hand. "Yes, Miss Granger. I've read the book. Excuse me. I've read the book, cover to cover." "How long you think that took her?" Ron asked Harry in an undertone. "Probably the day she got it," Harry whispered back. "Well then," Umbridge said waspishly, "you can tell me what Slinkard said about counterjinxes in Chapter 15. "Slinkard thinks that the term counterjinx is a misnomer," Hermione reported. "That it was just a term people used to make their jinxes sound more acceptable. But I disagree." "Do you now?" "Yes." Slinkard made his disdain of jinxes clear, so he can't exactly speak on them with any sort of impartiality, can he? Especially when you cross-reference books like A Brief History of Defensive Magic, which explains that counterjinxes rose up as a response to jinxes or against the dark arts, which points out that countercurses cancel out curses, and thus by that logic counterjinxes serve a similar purpose. Umbrage was a color Harry usually saw on Uncle Vernon. Are you quite finished? I have several other examples I could cite if you'd like. I would not. I am the teacher here, not you, Miss Granger, and it will be Slinkard we will be following, not books that haven't been ministry approved. Question, Ron noised, raising his hand. What qualifies as ministry approved? I would think the term would be obvious, Mr. Weasley. Like how the term counterjinx is obvious, Ron countered. If you expect us to study that term, then it stands to reason you can explain ministry-approved reading to us. Umbridge pursed her lips at that. It would be literature that the ministry has approved for educating students, notwithstanding the extra reading we could do on our own in the library or by purchasing books from a bookstore. Ron asked, "Where's the list?" "Excuse me, the list of ministry-approved reading. Where is it? How do we read it?" "That is none of your concern. And yet you want to teach us from it, so it is our concern. For you to be pulling from this list, then the list has to exist in written form as per Educational Decree Number 8, to provide the utmost transparency to both students and parents. Also pretty sure a report concerning the issues with a lack of transparency crossed the minister's desk recently. Something about how not having transparency only sows discord and distrust. Umbridge was now one of Vernon's danger colors. Where did you hear that? Turns out if you write the ministry, not everyone says shove off, Ron said, pulling out a sheet of parchment. Matter of fact, they're happy to provide the list to you if you ask. I'm guessing you're pulling off a recently revised version that somehow didn't get into ministry records yet. Yes, Slinkard's on the list, but so are the books Hermione just cited. Umbridge had apparently had enough. Detention, all three of you. For disrupting the class. Technically, all we were doing was asking for clarification and providing our sources when asked. Isn't the point of teaching to ensure that students have an understanding of the material being taught? What's the 10-galleon word Hermione prompt me onus? The onus of providing clarification is supposed to be on the teacher. That's you. I don't feel you've cleared anything up yet. Several students agreed with this. Therefore, by the definition set forth by the ministry. This technically isn't a class, so we're not obligated to be here, Ron concluded. Which means this is where we leave you, Harry said, packing up and heading for the door, since we don't want to waste the valuable time of a ministry official, which once again ended with Umbridge with an empty class. Again, seriously, you're making Slytherins look bad. Technically, I'm making Gryffindors look bad, Harry pointed out. Yes, but this is twice now you've led a walkout on a class, Ross complained. And then this last time, this is why you didn't make Gryffindor prefect. That was some serious Slytherin rule wrangling. Technically, we can thank Percy for the bulk of the work, Ron said. That doesn't get back to Umbridge, by the way. Oh, trust me, I'm not telling her anything. What are you doing here? A younger Slytherin demanded of them, making them all look up from their homework. Hanging out, Ron said. Also homework, Harry said. I invited them, Noelle, Blaise said, not looking up from his rune's homework. But they're Gryffindors. They're from another house, Noelle said, gesturing around at the Slytherin common room. Harry doesn't count. He can speak Parseltongue, so he's like an honorary Slytherin, Ross said, not sure what Ron's excuse is. I have a brother in Slytherin, Ron said. Sometimes. Using me as an excuse, Eichel Ronikins, Fred asked as he passed them. What's your plan for next year when they all graduate? Fergus asked. That I don't know, Ron said. But by then we'll be Newt students, so we can argue that we don't really care anymore. I mean, we don't really care now, Harry pointed out. Plus, this is the only dorm where you can see the mermaids. Mermaids? Noelle asked. You haven't told her about the mermaids yet. Usually we wait for the first years to discover them on their own, Ross said. Apparently it's a tradition. There's not really mermaids, Noelle demanded of Blaise. I mean there's giant snakes and three-headed dogs and sphinxes and Pegasian dragons and hippogriffs, Harry said, listing them off on his fingers. And gnomes and ghouls and house elves, Ron added. So really, mermaids are sort of par for the course. You ought to take care of magical creatures starting third year. I'm reasonably sure we won't have to study Scroots again. Oh, please, never again. Blaise said, shuddering. What are Scroots? Another first year asked. We don't know. We're not sure we want to know. We don't like them and they don't like us, Ron told them. Hagrid started off with like 50 of them at the start of our last year, and by the end of that year there was only one left. They made it into the new edition of Fantastic Beasts, Harry said. Hagrid sent us a copy. It got 5 stars. Is 5 stars good? Noel asked. 5 stars means extremely dangerous, will try to kill you. On the positive side, after the Scroots anything looks tame, Ross said. Dragons, even. That's the game, Ron decided. Hagrid covered Scroots, so when he pulls out a dragon we won't even bat an eye. I mean, he does have Nora, that's a possibility, Harry pointed out. True. Hey, Lee, what are you doing here? Oh, I'm Lee's brother, Grant, Lee Jordan said, heading to join Fred, George, and Fergus at a table by the windows. Like how Fred and George have Donald, Edmund, and Hubert. He asked. See, you're learning. Their first Care of Magical Creatures class, however, had a nasty surprise. Oh no, what did Skeeter write this time? Harry asked upon seeing Professor Grubblyplank. Cute, Potter, Professor Grubblyplank said. According to Dumbledore, Hagrid's off on an extended vacation. He'll be back when he gets back. Extended vacation? Harry echoed, looking at Ron. 10 Nuts says the dragons elected him their leader, so now he can't technically leave Romania, Ron said. So Luna was right, Harry decided.